for another hour.
Hey, folks, welcome back to For Whom the Bell Tolls, episode 9. I'm sorry we're a little late. We're just having too much fun backstage. I want to thank everybody for being here live in the chat. Of course, for those of you who are watching on replay, thanks for watching. Thanks for being part of Team Replay. As always, please leave a comment and let me know where you're watching it and when you're watching it, because I am planning the summer schedule of this show, and I promise we will get some episodes in your time zone. Most importantly, I got to thank our guest tonight for coming in and joining us. He is the host of the Fantasy Nuttwork. Some even say he might be the Friday Night Delight. He's done a lot of things in his life. We're going to talk about some of them tonight. He's one of my booktube heroes. Let's welcome Jimmy Nuts. If I had like a studio audience, if I had like a live studio audience right now, Jimmy, the whole neon sign would be flashing. The applause would be thundering. Thundering applause. I mean, we'd have to like go to commercial because the people wouldn't sit down and shut up long enough to begin.
But it's like the Triple H return to Madison Square Garden in like 2002 after he came back from his torn quad, where they went to a commercial break because the entrance was so long because people were losing their minds. That's what I like to imagine my impact is here.
Yeah.
For Whom the Bell Tolls.
It is. And, you know, I have to ask the ceremonial, how are you doing? Even though I asked him that 15 minutes ago, and I know exactly how he's doing. But for everybody else out there, tell him how you're doing tonight.
You know, I'm doing good. I our little chat before, I feel like I'm not so alone in the world now. In my opinions and in my mind. So that's always a good thing. But I'm doing fairly well. I've been a little bogged down, not getting to do as much as I would like to do in this sphere, which is always unfortunate, but I'm doing all right. How about you?
I'm doing pretty well. We just celebrated the 6-month anniversary of the channel. And so I'm happy we made it 6 months. There's zero chance this happens without other booktubers kind of lifting me up along the way. So that is really cool. Or maybe it does happen, but it probably takes a lot longer. So, but I've been reading some interesting books. Maybe we'll talk about them. We did a little bit backstage, but I'm going to quick say hi and shout out to some of the folks that are in the chat here. We've got Garrick. We making it out the library with this one. Sure. One of our awesome patrons, Slay. Hello, everyone. Another patron, Elaine. How are you? She says hi. And the good Dr. Philip Chase. Forget about the nut button. It's time for the nut bell. Okay.
I gotta nut. There we go.
There you go. I love it. You know what? I should get a nut bell.
You do love props.
I do.
Yeah.
I do. And I swear to God, you guys, one of these days, I'm going to have somebody on here and Rick Thunder's going to be doing the interview. That will be happening. Or maybe it'll just be the next person that invites me on their show. Let's show up like that, right? What do we got here? We got Sam sending love from St. Cloud, Minnesota. All right. It's about an hour away. And we've got Mitch. What are the thematics of this episode? Will we see strong character? Probably no redemption arcs. I'm guessing, at least on my side. No. There may be a pivotal moment on Jimmy's side that, you know, he is redeemed for something in his past, but I wouldn't bet on it. No. Brian, how am I feeling about the Timberwolves? Terrible. I stayed up late and they were awful. Ryan, applause button. Yep, I need that. Andrew, what's up? And we are all imagining exactly the applause and the neon lights. Both of our buddy Christopher Navo is here. And another good guy, Brent, is here in the chat. Andrew says, on the cusp of 2K. Okay, Andrew volunteers for Rick Thunder. Okay, cool. Well, this is great. So, as you guys know, if you've watched any of these episodes, I try to do a little bit of homework. I try to prepare some questions. I'm going to ask them. We'll see where we go, you know, with Jimmy's answers. They may, you know, we may go sequentially. I may be all over the board. So if I'm looking down a little bit at my notes, that's kind of what I'm doing. And so I think what I want to start off with is sort of some of the basics that you've been asked 1,000 times. Let's get them out of the way. What was the day, if you remember, or what was going on in your life when you decided to start a YouTube channel?
Not much. That's the problem. Yeah, I had actually started the channel before COVID hit.
Okay.
Something that I had already kind of decided, and I was like, new year, new me. I'm not really big on New Year's resolutions, but I was like, the start of the year, I'm gonna do this thing. And I was largely influenced by Ben, the Knee podcast, which is the Song of Ice and Fire podcast, which I'm coincidentally the co-host of now.
Yep.
But it was hosted by a guy named Ezra, and then Matt, who is still the co-host with me. And I just really adored the way they talked about A Song of Ice and Fire. And I knew I would of course love to have done in A Song of Ice and Fire podcast, but there's plenty of those. I'm already a fan of it. And I was like, well, I want to read other things too. So I had gotten into booktube, and I've been watching, Daniel Green, and I've been watching Murphy, and I've been watching Mike and Elliot, all the ones
Sure.
that everybody kind of starts watching. And I just started to think, well, I could probably come at this from a different angle as someone who, one, likes public speaking
Hmm.
and entertaining people. But on top of that, I really enjoy the idea of a hunt for like the next A Song of Ice and Fire. So that was really what my channel was about. My first video ever was, should you read Game of Thrones in 2020 after the disappointing season
Right.
8?
You
And I
know,
made a case for the books, and it's me just yelling at the camera for about 10
to read
minutes.
to read the books. It's interesting. On Patreon, we do a thing where we let our patrons, provide some questions for our guests, and that feeds exactly into what one of them is when did you read? They specifically wanted to know, when did Jimmy read A Song of Ice and Fire, and did that inform his opinions? If it was before the show, did that kind of inform your opinions on the show at all?
So from what I can remember, and this is murky for me because what I remember is watching episode 1 of Game of Thrones television show and not liking it. And I had read the book. I don't remember if I had finished the book,
Okay.
but I had definitely dabbled in it at that point. And then I watched the first episode. I didn't like it. Now, to be fair, I don't really like TV that much. I also
Okay.
hate children's actors. I think they're all just terrible. Turns out the Game of Thrones ends up having some of the greatest of maybe all time. Uh,
Right.
so I was kind of turned off by it, but I something about it kind of stuck with me. So I ended up reading the books, and then I went back to TV show, and I was like, I kind of like this. I kind of like this, and that's what kind of spurred it all. Like it just kickstarted it. And
Kind of.
so for me, I am really good at separating TV and books, and I am not somebody who needs to have them be identical. So for me, very much so, the show and the books live in like different realms of my brain and less in competition with one another. And now it is sometimes interesting to think about the differences between them and drawing like, or parallels, right? Of
Right.
how things were executed or what was executed better, because the show does do some of the things better than the book does as well. But in my head, they're so different that I don't necessarily know if it really does inform. I think I can use my book experience to point at maybe faults in the show. That's certainly part of it, but I can kind of keep them apart in my brain. It seems like a lot of people have trouble with that, especially like with Wheel of Time.
Yeah.
Like Wheel of Time really bothered a lot of people, and I get it.
Yeah.
I'm not a big
Yeah.
fan of the series, but I can understand why that would affect so many people. But I've also seen a good amount of people who have kind of been like, well, this is just a turning of the wheel and another time
Yeah,
of being able to
exactly.
separate,
Well,
which
I
is
mean, I
great.
think I think if they were going to turn the wheel, they ought to maybe put a little bit more care into the production value of what they were doing, because I think some of it was just so obviously CGI'd. And I haven't seen second season, but the first one was pretty rough.
Mhm.
So, but I don't know. Say, you mentioned something about liking public speaking. Did you do any public speaking in high school?
In high school, yeah, I guess I did. Now that I think about it, oh God,
Let's hear it. That's what
uh,
when people come on the show, we like to try to ask them some stuff they might not have ever been asked. So let's go there.
all right. So I used to be extraordinarily religious.
Okay.
Uh, I'm not anymore. I'm an atheist now, but grew up very religious in a religious household town, really, I would say, and when a part of a church, that was a huge part of my life. And at
And
the
that
age
was
of
in West Virginia, right? Right.
near it's Southwest PA / West
Okay.
Virginia.
Okay.
Southwest PA is really just West Virginia with different tax laws. That's kind of
Got
where
it.
like
Got it.
I spent all my time in West Virginia, right? So,
Gotcha.
um, I at the age of like 14 was really into the youth group and stuff like this, and I decided that I really wanted to be a youth pastor. So I started being able to kind of get guest spots. I would do like a 15-minute like Bible study talk or something like this. And eventually I was doing like sermons, and we would do what is it? See you at the pole. It's like a day at the beginning of the year where a bunch of people get around a flagpole and pray or something like this.
Okay.
And there would always be like a rally after that night. And the idea was is that people would see you praying, they'd ask about you, and then you try to invite them so you can get 10% of their tithings. All right, I'm being a little,
Sure.
I'm being a little cheap.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
But you bring people in, and you know you're trying to get new people into your church and your youth group and stuff. So I think for like 3 straight years, I think it was 3, I did this sermon, which was like an hour. And then I went to Nicaragua on missions trips, and I also preached there. And got to get used to having a translator. And some of those crowds were extraordinarily large, like very crazy.
Sure.
And I was doing all this at, 15, 16, 17.
Wow.
And that was kind of my idea of what I wanted to do with my life. Uh, and then that was kind of the first experiences of public speaking. I also was a huge pro wrestling fan, and I had a
Yep.
backyard wrestling federation, and we would cut promos and pass out, between
Awesome.
the matches, music videos, we'd cut promos. So I was cutting promos when I was 14, as the high flying hillbilly, is what my backyard wrestling name
That
was.
was the backyard name. I have to say, earlier today I was watching, some of your early matches, or at least the matches that I could find, and I have to say, you were robbed by King Kekoa. Kekoa, yeah, and Island Girl, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
You were robbed, my friend. I don't know what happened there. That ref got knocked out. I thought
Great
you had,
match.
I thought you had that in the bag.
That was my
So
first match back from my first knee injury, I believe. I'm pretty
s-
sure.
so you were doing wrestling promos at 14?
Well, I was backyard wrestling. Yeah, backyard wrestling from 14 to 17. I got started training and had my first match at 17 while I was still in high school, because West Virginia didn't have I think the age was 16 for pro wrestling there.
Okay.
So I started wrestling at 17, and I did it all the way until I was 25 or 26.
So when you decide you want to go from backyard wrestling to actually doing this, there must have been local promoters or a local company that
Mhm.
taught you something, right? I mean, you have to have some
Yeah,
training in this. This
yeah,
is dangerous work if you don't know what you're doing, or the
yeah.
person across the ring from you doesn't know what they're doing.
That's usually the bigger issue. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So how did that work? Did you just go looking to find, a
yeah.
company that would train you?
Yeah, as cheap as I could get it,
Yeah.
and getting in a ring, a real ring, because in backyard wrestling, we created it out of tires and plywood and carpet padding and stuff like this, right? Um, and so anyone that had a ring, that had a pair of tights, that's as legit as it could be for me.
That's
I thought it was the best. So I found a place called CPW in Kaiser, West Virginia, and I went and got trained with a buddy named Chris, who didn't stick around. It was pretty brutal, and
sure.
trained there for like 6 to 9 months. On the weekends, so 2 times, and we would help set up and tear down, paying your dues and stuff.
Right.
The training wasn't great, to be honest with you. You'd be much better going to a real school and doing it. But
Right.
basically, what happened was I used that to get started, met some good people, and then trained with them a lot before shows or whenever I could get up to a school, and then did even more finishing training, is what I call it, with ROH through their seminars and their school out in Philadelphia, well, Bristol. Yeah, I don't know where it is now. I think it's actually near me now, but yeah. So I got
It's it,
started at CPW at the Volunteer Fire Department
I
in Kaiser.
I mean, I think that that's so cool because I mean, all of us drop the elbow if we had a sibling or a neighbor or whatever at some point in
Bucktown
our life.
elbow.
Yeah, I mean, someone dropped that elbow on somebody. So I think that, I've always wanted to know that, and I thought that our, audience might be interested in something like that. Did you, being such a story kind of driven person, did you have anything to do with creating the character that you
Mhm.
were doing or,
Yeah.
scripting out a little bit about storyline? Was that part of your, you know, day to day, so to speak, in that?
Yeah. Yeah. Also, Fantasy Watch wants to know what house shirt. This is House of the Dragon.
Yes.
Just straight up. Actually, really comfortable shirt from Box Lunch. I really recommend their stuff. But so yeah, building your character really is up to you. Now, I would go places, especially early on, and I'd be in a squash match. I'd be like, put on this mask. You're gonna go lose to Jeff Daniels at
Right.
SAW in Tennessee and get dropped on your head and get paid with a hot dog. But
Right.
you do start to create a character, and then the storylines. A lot of times they have ideas, but a lot of these places, especially if you're not the guy, you're
Hmm.
showing up and you're wrestling a different person every month,
Right.
and you got to kind of create a story within the match, which is the beauty and the art of it all. A lot of stuff that is today and what's popular is that it's a television show, right? So
Yeah.
like they have to have a through
Right.
line.
Right.
But in the independent scene, there are storylines and some of it's really amazing, and I was a part of some of those. But the bigger thing is like, how can you tell a match with no backs, like, or I'm sorry, tell a story within your match with no backstory that everyone in the crowd can digest and understand exactly what you're trying to
Right.
do. And
That
that's the art of pro wrestling.
I think it's fantastic. I grew up literally, so I'm living in a house right now that is about maybe a mile from where the AWA used to film.
Yeah.
So, that's Nick Bockwinkel and Jesse
Right.
Ventura, and
Non.
I grew all of them. Kind of
Mhm.
came through Minnesota. Kurt Hennig was up here. My One of the guys I graduated high school with, his older brother was Rick Rude, so he used to pick on us. Uh,
Hmm.
but all of that was going on up here. But I'm not a big guy, so there was never any chance for me to do that. So I was always wondering, I gotta ask Jimmy what that feeling. So tell us about when you're walking into that ring. What's it feel like? And then we'll go on to book stuff. I promise, because I think sort of people live a little bit vicariously through entertainers.
Right.
And did you feel that adrenaline, when you went in there, or was it just kind of a job?
I haven't felt alive since I stopped.
Really?
Does that answer that question?
Yeah. Yeah, that does.
Yeah, man.
So
Yeah.
it absolutely, it's life. Well,
Yeah.
you never know what the future holds. You may not be in the ring, but you never know. Things, who knows what involvement in that world.
I mean, I think I'm done with that world,
Okay.
unfortunately. I think it's actually for the best for me not to be in that world. But there's something empowering about walking out in front of hundreds or thousands of strangers and knowing that you're gonna have them in the palm of your hand in like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And when it works, nothing like it. And then the best is even whenever there's people there who don't even know what pro wrestling is. Or maybe
Yeah.
they have a bias against pro wrestling. I had a lot
Yeah.
of people back, people that worked with me at my jobs, and they would all laugh, and make fun of me, and they come to the show,
Right.
and
Yeah.
at the end, goddamn if they weren't believers,
Absolutely. They loved
and
it.
that is as good as it has ever been, and there's really nothing quite like it.
That's pretty awesome. It looks like we've got, uh, Evie wants to know if the books make you feel alive.
Nah,
Probably,
I mean a
maybe not
little
as much.
bit. If anything, it reminds me that I'm alive. I guess is probably a good way
Yeah,
of
that's
putting it.
good. Well, we'll move past the wrestling talk, but I just, think that in the world of booktube, there's going to be very few people that have crossover in professional wrestling as being a booktuber. Probably about as many as nightclub owners crossing over into doing fantasy and science fiction books. So I think we're two of a kind over here.
We got an MMA guy. We got Jordan Levitt.
There you go.
Yeah,
There,
UFC fighter. He has a booktube channel, very small, very cool. He loves Dresden Files. He reads fantasy, and he's dope. You guys
that's
should all go subscribe to him. I'm gonna have him on Chatting with Nuts, I hope, in the future.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Before we get too much into your channel, one of the other Patreon questions that I wanted to ask you was, is there a booktuber who's no longer active that you wish made a comeback? That you would,
Alan.
besides Alan, Alan like hangs on by like a thread, and then when the thread's like spooling out, he'll just quickly grab onto a little bit more rope, just enough.
Today, guys, today.
Yeah.
Oh, booktuber that I wish was still around. Yeah, Rhythm Ma. She's the goat. She was one of my very first friends. Alex Nevaez is another one that I'm obviously thinking of. Alex was my first ever friend on BookTube, and
Okay.
just a phenomenal guy. Uh, you know, uh, just a dude I would like to hang out with. You don't even have to talk about books. I just like to see him. We always made plans to hang out. Never happened, unfortunately. But Alex, but also Rhythm Ma. Rhythm Ma kind of went under the radar because she was really big in Wheel of Time, and she was
Okay.
actually on the post show panels for season 1 Wheel of Time for Amazon, which was
Really?
really cool. Yeah, but she was just is a phenomenal person, and I always thought that she had a really unique perspective on books. And she introduced me. I think she's the one that got me to read Robin Hobb. I'm pretty sure. And her Discord was the first community I ever joined and was a part of, and was the only was the only community I was a part of for a very long time. And unfortunately, I haven't talked to her in a while, and I haven't been as active at all really in her Discord, just because once you have your own thing going, it's kind of hard
Right.
and time's thin. But Rhythm Mob was awesome. She was awesome.
Very cool. Well, I'll go back and take a look and see at some of her videos because that's a new one to me as well.
Yeah, she has a great Dead House Gates video about Fellison and Malazan. It's
I, I
still
I haven't read it yet. It's on my July list. June or July is Dead House Gates for
yeah,
me. I'm finishing that series we were talking about pre live, and then
begrudgingly.
I'm going back into Malazan. But
Yeah, I highly recommend her video. I think that she actually did a Gardens of the Moon discussion with me and Philip, and it was also one of my favorite videos I've done. Also, Slowly Read is 100%
yeah,
on that list.
yeah,
He's
Mark's
the goat.
yeah, he's just the realest dude you're ever gonna find, right? Makes
Mhm.
no bones about it.
Yeah,
What you see is what you get, and
very well spoken though.
yeah,
Mark is one of those people. Like a lot of us get on here and we all sound the same, and that's not intentional for the most part. Like osmosis is a thing, and also influence is a thing, and it takes a while for people to find their voice.
hmm
But man, did Mark not just know it from the jump? Like the dude just did it, and you can tell that that's who he is in his everyday life. I have a lot of respect for Mark.
yeah. I would definitely count him amongst the what you see is what you get.
Hmm.
Very authentic self.
Very intelligent.
Yeah, it seems so. I found him by accident. I was trying to find any review on Sandman Slim that I could find, and there was one guy that did
It's
his
always him.
review on Sam, and he was like gushing over it, and I'm like, "Oh God, cool! At least this dude is on my team with this book." So when you think about your channel right now, do you have any type of certain creative routine or a process that you go through when you're, kind of planning out or even making your content?
Yeah, it usually goes with I have an idea, I get some
Okay.
motivation, and then I get really depressed and start self-loathing, and I don't do it.
Really? Does the
Yeah, that's
depression does the
basically it.
depression have anything have to do with the content or just other life stuff?
Um, no, not really. It doesn't have anything to do with the content. I mean, every now and then something will happen. Like I'll get a comment that I feel is off base, or maybe like it makes me never want to speak to anyone online ever again. But like, it's largely just who I am, and just how much I don't really care for myself. I would say that that's probably a big portion of it.
Yeah.
Um, you know, if if I had 1% more confidence, I think I would have a lot more videos that I could be proud of.
Mhm.
So it's a forever struggle. But as far as like what I do, I've really boiled it down to every 2 weeks I do Chatting with Nuts, right? And
Mhm.
I have a wrap up, and now I have a reading vlog. So that's about 4 videos a month. And I think
Yep.
that's a really healthy balance for me while also not overexposing myself and people getting tired of me, hopefully.
Yeah.
Um, Now, with those videos, those sound like pretty generic or general things, but I'm constantly thinking about how to tweak that formula or how to get better at that formula. Because once you have a structure, you can then play with said structure, or you can optimize said structure. So with my wrap ups, they they go from maybe me being extremely long-winded and kind of off the cuff to sometimes I try to tighten them down. Like, okay, if I had to do a book blurb for each book, like what would that
Mhm.
look like? So I'm always trying to play with those things. And the weird thing is I don't really take views as validation. Like, I just know when it's something's good for the most part. Like a
Yeah.
lot of stuff I find that I did that was very good did not do well in views, and
Yeah.
that just happens. So I don't try to let that deter me from feeling accomplished about something. Um, so I think that that's it. It's like taking what I'm really good at, and I've always been a big fan of less is more.
Mhm.
So, and with that, I mean like different type of videos, and I'm trying to always dial in the things that I do regularly better, and then also, on the side, trying to think of these new things.
Well, that makes a lot of sense to me, especially because as I looked back on your channel catalog, for a long time, it was mainly book reviews. I mean,
99%,
yeah, I
99%.
mean, so do you feel like your book review content you don't do as much because just it doesn't track as well within YouTube, or is it that you'd rather just do the wrap up and the vlogs and it's more of like a personal choice that you have a better time doing it that way?
All right. So one, I like the challenge of wrapping up a reading experience in somewhat of a brief format in a wrap up. I find that challenge to be interesting, and sometimes I fail at that challenge. My last wrap up, I was very disappointed in myself. Um, so one, I kind of like that unique challenge a little bit. But as far as book reviews, I looked at it this way. Like anybody wants to be like, oh, like you don't do book reviews. Like I bet you still a large majority of my uploaded content, I bet it's over 80% are book reviews. I
It
bet you.
is.
Yeah.
It
I
is.
I I pay I did that. I did that. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I was releasing videos every week, and I was doing that thing. But the problem with the reviews and where I kind of came to stand on it is one, I took them very seriously. And what I mean by that is I was really trying to represent a perspective outside of my own while also, sharing my experience with the book, which is
Mhm.
more of the reaction side of a review. But when I read, I was reading for everyone. I was trying to think of like even people who comment on my videos, like, oh, like Brent's here. Like, would
Yeah.
Brent like this? What kind of reader is Brent? What kind of reader is Garrick or my friend Amanda? And I'm like, okay, so who is this for? Who would like these things? And I would try to come to like a general consensus of like, would most people enjoy this part of this book that I have
Mhm.
found remarkable to mention in a review? And I know that sounds like silly and kind of stupid and maybe
Oh,
melodramatic, but
I don't think so at all. I think it seems very thoughtful because you're not just puking out what you think of the book. You are trying to take into account what your audience might be looking for. I mean, to me,
yeah.
that's actually good content.
Well, I took it. I wanted to get better at reviews, so I read a lot of books about critical theory, but I also started reading books about writing. So I'd point out things about the writing. Now, to be fair, if you go back in my videos, there are definitely videos where I took 25 minutes to scream at the camera. My Way of
Yeah.
Kings review is dog shit. Like I think My Way of
Okay.
Kings review sucks, and it has 50,000 views. So that just shows your views don't mean shit. Like as far as
Yeah.
quality,
Yeah.
because that Way of Kings reviews ass. But uh, yeah. So eventually I started getting I kept getting it to the point where I was really trying to do that. And I found it to be a bit stressful. And one of the other factors that make it, and I'm not saying it's too stressful to do, but it was kind of
Mhm.
like, okay, could I do this in a different way? I was also a bit burnt out on reviews because I felt as if I was saying like there's only so many words you have to describe things spoiler free. And I never wanted to get to the point where I felt like I was repeating myself. And I did start to feel that way. Um, and
Sure.
maybe that's from a limited vocabulary or maybe a limited mindset about what I can critique and what I can't critique. But regardless, I started to feel a little samey, and that bothered me a good bit because whenever you're coming at it from trying to be neutral and then
Mhm.
adding in your tidbits at the end, like by the way, I don't like love triangles, so love triangle here didn't really work for me, like stuff like that. Whenever you do that, you start fence sitting and you can
Yeah.
drive yourself crazy going
Yeah.
back and forth with yourself. And so it stopped being so much fun to do. But also, whenever I review a book and I give it a rave review and
Mhm.
someone goes and buys it and they tell me that they wish they hadn't bought it because it sucked, that bothers me. Because
Okay.
not,
So,
not not them, by the way. They're free to think that. I mean,
yeah.
from my perspective, I'm like, I got it wrong. Maybe I got it wrong because
No, no, I'm gonna totally stop you there. I never interrupt my guests. You guys know this. I will tell you, everyone has an opinion, and oh well, you did your best. You expressed what you thought was good and bad about the book. Someone interpreted it, they bought it, it didn't work for them. Too bad, so sad. I know that probably, because you feel bad, right? They spent their money, they spent
that's the
their
big thing,
time.
spending the money. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but that kind of comes part and parcel with having an opinion. I mean, you could do
You're
that with
right.
a restaurant. You could say,
Yeah,
Brian, when
sure.
you're in my city, you should go to this restaurant. And I get there and have the shittiest meal ever. Well, it costs me money. I'm not going to turn around and blame Jimmy. I mean, I don't know what kind of day the
Some
cook
people
was
might.
having, you know, but
That's a logical take, by the way. I'm
yeah,
irrational. So so I struggle to see that, and I feel like I have failed, especially if the person's my friend. That's
yeah,
where it sucks. Like for instance, I really love Robin Hobb.
yeah,
Incidentally, 75% of my Discord hates Robin Hobb. And I feel so bad
yeah.
because I think they all read it. Most of them read it because I loved it. And they're coming back like, this is one of the worst things I've ever read. And I'm like, sick. I'm sorry I wasted your money and time. That sucks.
Well, I don't think so because they may not have liked the story, but they got something out of it, even on a subconscious level. Her prose is fantastic. They probably learned some new words. If nothing else, they learned what they don't like, right? I mean,
Well, that's
maybe you've informed their opinions on what not to go for. Maybe they don't like slow burn stories.
yeah, and it's less whenever someone just has a disagreeing point of view. I've had great comments. One of them was about China Miéville's Perdido Street Station. A guy left a dissertation about how he actually thinks Miéville does a terrible job of like suspending, like putting you in the secondary world, and
Mhm.
he actually had some really great points. That's cool. I love that.
Yeah.
But when it's just a sense of disappointment, that kind
Yeah.
of sucks. Now, this isn't why I stopped doing book reviews, by the way.
Mhm.
Like that's just part of it. That would add in to where it's not as fun. It's not as fun.
Well, right.
But
But
honestly,
I think it makes sense though if you go review a book and 100 people watch it and 100 people read that book, 100 people aren't going to love the book as much as you. Some might like it better, but there's going to be some that don't like it at all, you
oh
know.
yeah, I mean, there's people that think a song by Fire is total garbage, right? And it's like, I love it. It's my everything, and I'm
Yeah.
totally cool with that. I'm always happy to hear out the other side of a conversation. But I never want to feel like I led anyone astray, and that's kind of
Mhm.
a crappy feeling. But like ultimately, I'm into like the nitty gritty. I mean, the main reason is just like I did it, man. Like I did it for 2.5 years, full tilt,
Right.
and I just felt like I had hit kind of like a teetering point where I wasn't getting better at them, and
Mhm.
like I didn't know how much more time I wanted to invest in driving myself mad trying to figure
Right.
it out. And I want to try something else, so I wanted to make wrap ups cooler. And then of course, life is another thing. Reviews took me a lot of time to write out and to think about. Whereas like a wrap up, it's like one day a month. I sit down and I think about it for a few hours, and then I go shoot my video, which is kind of
Yeah.
nice. So the vlogs have been kind of a midway point with
Mhm.
that, and the vlogs are dope because I shoot them on my on my
I
phone.
love them. I think your blogs are
Oh,
great because we get unfiltered Jimmy. We never know exactly where you're going to be. And it's, you're very good improvisationally when it comes to saying what's on your mind. And that really comes through, at least for me, in watching your vlog. So it's pretty good.
I appreciate that. I find myself arguing with myself, and being able to do that like live in front of a camera is pretty cool. I also do just enjoy the B roll. I don't know why. I enjoy shooting B roll.
Yeah.
Unless I'm going to post on like social media that isn't YouTube, obviously.
Yeah.
So now I kind of feel like a shame. I feel like an Instagram influencer when I'm like taking videos at events. I'm like, oh god, people probably think I'm like some Instagram wellness influencer or some
You
shit.
are. You're a wellness gym influencer. I wonder, we won't get into this today, but I wonder, food for thought, if some of the things that you did when you were younger, like doing the sermons and things like that, like you talked about trying to get in the members and doing the tithing, you feel a little of that when someone buys a book that they don't like. I,
Yeah,
I,
maybe.
I wonder if any of that is, based in some of that, the feelings of that clearly you don't have anymore.
I think it's just growing up without a lot of money.
Yeah.
And remembering trying to get back into reading at times, and then
Yeah.
everyone tells me a book's great, and I go bought it, and books weren't cheap for the money I was making, and I'd buy it, and I hated it, and then I would feel like I got ripped off, right? Like that sucks. That's not a good feeling.
Yeah.
So I think it comes a lot from that, like you know, money wasn't always there for me,
Yeah.
so
So you feel it for others as well when they go
yeah,
to do that. Look,
yeah.
we summoned him. I mean, he's technically not coming on the show till next week, which we're going to talk about later because I think maybe you have some helpful hints, tips,
Yeah,
and tricks.
I gotta teach you how to reel them in. My God.
Exactly, exactly. Maybe we could do a top 10. Well, we'll figure that out. But oh my god, let me ask. So you've been doing YouTube for, is it 3, 4 years, something like
4
that?
years, 4 and a half
4 years.
almost.
Okay. So what has surprised you about it, either in the audience or in yourself or in the platform? When I ask, like, what have you found surprising? What comes to mind?
Honestly, I'm just surprised about how nice people are in the comments. We could go on and on about, "Oh, I got this bad comment one day," but like
Yeah.
99% of people are really encouraging and generous with their time whenever they leave a really thoughtful comment. There's one guy named McScarfield, and
Yeah.
he is a genius, and he
Yes.
leaves. I mean, I told him, I said, "Bro, you need to start a blog, or you
Right.
need to start a channel because you have so much context and so much knowledge." But I think it's just the generosity of people with their time. YouTube comments is almost unanimously considered to be, a cesspit.
Mhm.
I don't find that's the truth on BookTube. And as someone who runs a manga channel, I don't really upload it
Mhm.
to it anymore. But like, there's a reason why I started not uploading on that channel because it wasn't fun. And I realized how much I care about the, response, even if it is just a, hey, thanks, appreciate it. Like just someone, being kind or sharing their perspective, even if it's not something I agree with is really cool. Um, that's not, that is not common on YouTube.
No, that, it's I would say for me that I have the exact same answer as you. I mean, coming from the bar business, which is cutthroat and everybody, nobody likes each other, to
Yeah.
coming into here and content creators are like, "Hey, if you want to do this, here's my, Discord names, message me anytime or, to do whatever." Just this kind of rising tide lifts all ships mentality, both in other content creators and in comments. And you're right. Yeah, there's always a couple of people that might say something stupid, but you know what? It's 99% great. So
Yeah, now the percentage of bad things goes up as you get bigger, right? I mean, that is something that people don't think about when they want a lot of views and things. You get a lot of people who aren't actually there for a good time. But yeah, that was probably the biggest surprise to me. Actually, is just how many people were willing to reach out and to create a community. I mean, I've met some people that I consider to be great friends through this. I mean,
yeah,
Alan, I love Alan more than anything.
yeah,
I would have never expected to make these kind of connections with people.
it is. I mean, you'll for sure hate me in another 6 months. We've only known each other for maybe 4 or 5, but another six, ugh, you'll be done with me. Um, Have there been was there a memorable moment or a milestone for you, on BookTube that, I don't know if it's hitting a certain subscriber count or a certain interview that you did or just something that you kind of remember as a milestone that pleased you. In the
That
words of Alan, it
pleased me.
pleases me.
That pleased me. Hmm.
Yes.
I would say the first time that me and Alan hit 100 concurrent viewers on Chatting with Nuts was probably my favorite moment because I remember whenever I did Chatting with Nuts and a lot of people told me it was not a good idea that I started another
Mhm.
channel if I want to do it. And I was like, nah, I just feel like this is the thing I kind of want to do. And that isn't bad advice, by the way. But there's something to be
Mhm.
said for going against the grain and it working out.
Yeah. Well,
And
you're an
yeah,
engaging interviewer as well, though, too. I mean, people can
thank
go back and watch your stuff. And, I have found many times because of the format that we're in, it is very podcasty,
you.
talking heads. I can just listen to it. And
Yeah.
I'm very sure of when Alan's speaking versus when Jimmy's speaking. I don't necessarily need to see that. I could be off driving in my car, listen to it, whatever. So
Do you want to hear my Alan impersonation?
I do. I think we all do.
Christina! Christina! There, that was it.
I mean, again, if
Was that good?
uh, listen, if there was a studio audience here, the applause sign would be on. The people, we'd be going to commercial break right now. It would be that kind of crazy reception for the Allen impersonation. Absolutely. He brings the fun. He brings the fun. Oh my god. See, all these people are crying. We love it. Ah, what a great community. Oh my god. Yeah, see? Oh my god. Well, we talked a little bit about negative feedback. We don't need to get into that, but I do wanna know, does your Discord, because I'm not really a Discord person other than for communications, but does your Discord and your Patreon kind of influence and shape anything that you decide to read or do? I know you do the
Oh
picking
yeah.
of the random ball, but beyond that, is that where you get most of your kind of, "This is my next big book or my next big series"?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Without a doubt, actually. I try not to I don't say that publicly too much because I don't want people to join
Mhm.
and be like, "Oh, he's definitely gonna read whatever I suggest." That's not how it works, I
Right.
mean, I think, like, there's been at least 20 people begging me to read the Red Rising sequels for, like, 2 years, and I just still haven't done it. I will one day whenever
Sure.
the final book gets announced, but, yeah, definitely, definitely. Mitch, who is, like, one of my favorite people I've ever met online, he's so funny. He was in the comments earlier, but he was like, "Man, when we reading Peter Watts's debut novel, which has, like, a Leviathan, like, deep sea sci-fi type
Ooh.
thing?" And I was like, June, like,
Yeah,
let's
like
do June.
now.
And hopefully we'll do that. But there's been a ton of people who have joined, and maybe they saw like a one-off video of me, like maybe they heard me talking about Blood Meridian, they joined the Discord. It's mostly fantasy people, but
Mhm.
they might come in and say, hey, you should check out this book, and it's something I'd never even heard of. So yeah, this happens all the time, to be
Yeah,
honest with you.
I've been wanting to ask you that because as booktubers go, I guess in this, what we call our corner of booktuber or whatever, you have far and away the most diverse selection of monthly reads of anybody that I watch. I never know what you're going to be reading when I go into your monthly wrap up. Hell, half of these books I've never even heard of. And, it's like, I don't need to join the Discord because I could just watch Jimmy and Cloud Atlas is now on my TBR, right? Because I never even heard of it before. So, yeah,
It-
look at this here. We got, oh, yeah. So there's the Fourth Red Rising book. And
Look at
Laura,
this
just
self-promotion in the chat banner.
right. And just so she knows, I'm halfway through that review and then I had to click over to start the stream. So I am aware because I was watching it.
Better finish it.
Yeah, no kidding. Don't want to give you that 50% watch ratio. Yeah, Jimmy, you're in a buddy read right now,
Am
according to Alan.
I?
But is he? I don't know.
I honestly don't know. Everyone's saying I love grandma books, and it is true.
What's a grandma book?
But anything by Barbara Kingsolver, in that realm.
Okay.
Demon Copperhead, Poisonwood Bible. I brought Bookish on, and he's like, oh, Demon Copperhead's a grandmother book. I was like, yeah, and he's like, I just became a grandfather, and I just read it. And I was like, see, I told you, you have a
Wow.
grandkid, and you just read Barbara Kingsolver. Like, it's just something in the air.
Yeah.
Comes with the AARP discount.
Don't even get me started on AARP. They started sending me that shit when I was 40. Yeah.
What did it come with? Sizzler coupons?
I mean, movie coupons, insurance, AAA. I mean, you name it. It was like, and I remember when I turned 40, getting this double ARP stuff going. Who's retiring at 40? First of all, are they prepping me for are they prepping me for a decade or two of junk mail to come? I don't know. Maybe they're just trying to get me used to it, but I don't know. Oh Lord, where was I in my questions? I don't know. I wanted to ask you about this. And some of this I know because you've incorporated vlogging into some of your work life, right? So when you're traveling for work, you've been able to do that. So has the balance between, you've got your work life, you've got your personal life, and then you've got whatever this YouTube life is.
Yeah.
How do you balance those demands?
Well, I'm a habit person.
Okay.
So like I like to do the same things every single day. And this might be odd, but I am a private person. Like it takes a lot for me to show anything that isn't just this shot, actually. That's why I didn't do vlog content for the longest time. And there's various reasons for that. But yeah, I'm kind of a private person. So like when I go to jiu-jitsu, like I'm not the book guy. You know what I mean? I'm a jiu-jitsu guy. I'm the purple belt. I'm the guy that's complaining about his knees constantly.
Sure.
Or when I'm at work, I'm just the JavaScript guy that really likes to do CSS. Everyone's like, oh, let him do all the CSS tickets. And then when I'm here, I'm the grandma books guy.
Grandma Books. I mean, have you thought about changing the name of your channel to Grandma Books?
I have thought about changing it to the Fiction Nuttwork, so people will stop messaging me, ask me if I don't like fantasy anymore because I happen to read 3 other books that weren't fantasy. That'd be great.
Oh my! I think once you hit 4, the algorithm changes your name automatically.
Yeah,
you're gonna log in and it's just gonna be the Fiction Network. It knows everything we're talking about right now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the name's that big of a deal, right? Like Quinn's Ideas was a song
right?
Fire for like 10 years, right? Like I don't think it matters that much, which means that changing it probably wouldn't be that big of a deal. But like fantasy's my bae. That's my first love,
Mm-hmm.
and I still love it the most. But I just happen to also read like maybe one or two other things, you know.
Read other stuff. I mean, I think Philip deals with that to some degree as well. I mean, he throws in some sci-fi from time to time
Bro,
when the Beowulf alarm is not going out. Oh my god, I didn't mean to say that out loud. He might be in the comments watching. His whole house just turned red and the alarms are going off.
bro,
So
can I tell you this comment I got the other day?
yeah,
They might be watching this, but
yeah.
I thought this comment was so off base and rude. They commented and they commented on me and Alan's Chatting with Nuts episode where we had kind of talked about top tens. And I had pondered the idea of maybe not doing wrap ups anymore because I noticed a drop off in them.
Mhm.
And it's not because they're not getting view. I can't do them because no. I was thinking, well, maybe a second reading vlog would be better. Like I could do 2 reading vlogs a month, instead of reading vlog and a wrap up. And they left a comment telling me that I had no sense of branding and that I had pivoted.
Oh,
And I was talking about books no one cared about, like A Little Life and such. But they said, this is my favorite thing. They go, you can't, like, if you can't figure out that, like, why Philip has 30K subs and like you don't, you know, you're dumb, kind of, you know. I'm
sure.
paraphrasing. And he said Philip has never pivoted. And I was like, are you kidding? Are you kidding? Has he, like,
Yeah. Well, I mean, correct. Yeah.
and no, and I'm not. That's not a slant towards Philip or a diss towards Philip. I mean, but like to say, like, I was like, wait, do you watch Philip's channel? Like, are you out of your mind?
Yeah. I mean, English professor reacts to One Piece is
Great title.
Oh, it's
Great.
the best. It's the
Great
best.
title.
I'm going to answer this question, then we're going to go back to what you're talking about. The book next to my special edition of Dune is the new Broken Bindings edition of The Martian that I'm part of the sci-fi subscription service. And they just sent that to me yesterday and I made a short. Although then I found out that if a short is over 60 seconds, it's not actually a short. So I made a video, made a 92-second video.
So what you're saying is you learned.
Yeah, I learned a little bit of something. It's a cool book though, you know, and I wanted to be on that, you know, the fantasy subscription list, but take what I could get. But yeah, so I mean, pivoting, I don't know, man. I think that's a little overrated. And when it comes to channel names, I certainly didn't know what I was doing. I mean, I didn't know what BellTube was. I figured, well, no one is going to have a channel named BellTube, so sure as shit, somebody did.
BellTube. I like
Yeah.
BellTube. Yeah.
I love it too. I mean, I'm never changing it because it goes with, you know, my flask that I sell here, these Bell flasks, which is now available in Pink Panther pink, by the way. Thank you. But so yeah, I mean, it was kind of like keep all my stuff under the Bell name, but I don't know. It certainly for search results, maybe not the best idea, but that's cool. It looked like Metro 2044. Got it. Oh, and Laura says Bell is the #1 cable provider in Canada. So I immediately thought of that. I'm glad that my name is bringing you such mediocre cable service in Canada. On Wednesdays, we drink from pink flasks. I have to put that on there so I have it forever on the video. Excellent. So you've had a 4-year journey.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, someone's getting started today. Or maybe you're just on a work trip or maybe whatever, and someone recognizes you or the conversation comes up and they say, you know, I've always kind of thought about doing something like that. You know, whether it be about books or whatever the topic, what would you tell that person if they said, would you give me some advice? What comes to mind?
Always think about scale. Always. And do what you think is sustainable. I think that those are 2 very, very important things. I never ever did multiple videos in a week because I knew I couldn't do it. Like I might be able to do it for like a month. There was no way I was ever going to be able to do it. There were times where I did post like 2 videos a week, but like I could never guarantee that was ever going to happen because I know myself. And then, you know, not being afraid to try other things. And it also depends on what your goal is. Like, I know me and you talked and you're like, I'm just kind of doing what I want and it's fun. And like, I'm with you.
Yeah.
That's another reason why I find that comment from that person very ironic, because like, if anyone's ever watched me and thinks that I'm concerned with marketing,
right,
then I don't know. It concerns me, actually. I would like to see where I said that. But if you're someone who is out there gunning for success and you want to see the numbers climb, then, the advice is to be scoped, be extremely scoped, because YouTube would like to know who you are and what you are. And the more variety you add to this thing, the less they know who to show it to. And the less people who click on a video is always a bad thing. Increase
Right.
your subscriber count. I think having a pretty, and also I don't think it's a terrible idea to have kind of a scope in mind. That way you have some sort of direction to go. Those are probably the things, but mostly just do what you think you can do. If you can only do a video once a month, just make it the best video you can make and make a video once a month. It's better than nothing. But a lot of my favorite channels, honestly, dude, are like CIA iceberg videos or like crazy mysterious disappearances. And these guys, most of them, they only post like once, twice a month, maybe.
Right.
They get 1 million views. And now obviously they probably can afford that because,
They get 1 million views.
yeah, they get 1 million views, right?
Yeah.
But their stuff is just fantastic. So I think quality over quantity is always a good idea. But also, if you want to turn on your camera and just talk to it like a Steve Donahue or a Brian Lee Durfee, do it.
Do that too.
The raw aspect of YouTube is what makes it special.
Most definitely. I mean, when I was watching Durfee's video of his tour of his studio and he's showing the duct tape that's holding the old tripod, but don't worry, because there's another piece of duct tape over here, so that piece of duct tape kind of still goes along with that. I mean,
yeah,
that's the best. And yeah, I mean, in this guy's case, every 6 months.
But you know what, when Alan does this Jeopardy episode, it's an event.
And it absolutely is an event. I think, everybody kind of drops what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, and no one does it quite like Alan, right? And it's not like he has the best production value. He's not shooting with multiple cameras and have an electric. No, it's the question. It's the content. It's that makes it special and unique. And no one thinks like Alan, So
no,
he can write those things. So that's the kind of thing. And also just know that overnight success isn't always a good thing. Sometimes you don't even know who you are, before you start getting a bunch of people and then you've committed to things. I saw this happen a lot, just doing it over 4 years. And I'm sure people who've been on here longer have seen it as well. But also it's okay to quit. Like, that's another thing I always tell people, like, man, I just feel bad. I'm like, it's a hobby, People quit hobbies.
Right.
Same thing with jujitsu,
It's the same thing with a job that you don't like.
Yeah.
Somebody had asked me once, are you a good quitter? And I never thought to, ask myself that before, because I thought, quitting is for losers. And, the only way you'll ever fail is if you quit. And that's how I was brought up. But the reality is sometimes you do things that you really ought not to be doing, and you could be doing other things, but for the time that you're putting into something that maybe you should contemplate. I think it's the word. Quitting has this connotation to it, where selecting another path seems a little bit more like of a positive choice than giving up. Quitting seems like
the word is
up.
choice. The word is choice. You're making a choice, which means that there's multiple avenues. Choice is life, right? I think it was Robin Hobb or R. Scott Baker? One of them said that the opposite of death is not life, it is choice. Once you're dead, you can no longer make choices. And choices is what we all strive for. I mean, if you think about it, right? Most of what we do, at least here in America and under the system that we have, is to acquire more money. Why? To have more choice.
Right.
And that's why New York City is such a special place. And I'm bringing this up because I was there and I was just trying to put my finger on, like, what do I love so much about this place? It's choice. There's literally a choice for whatever you want within a walking distance almost. And choice is what makes, I think, the spirit well. And sometimes that choice is to quit. And that means you're making a choice to hopefully do something else, right? To take that energy and put it in other places. And also, like, I don't know. I don't want to encourage anyone to quit and stuff, but like you'll know when it's time. Like, for instance, I could probably go back to wrestling. I shouldn't, based on, advice from people who care about me, but like I could. Like, technically I shouldn't be doing jiu-jitsu, right? Or any kind of Muay Thai or anything.
Right.
But it's like I could go back, but like, what point do you exit? You know what I mean? Everything comes to an end. So I looked at it and I'm like, okay, I go back and then like, what's that look like? So I think it's okay to walk away from things. Seen people like tear themselves up about walking away from a channel, but like taking a break is totally fine. Quitting is totally fine. Um,
Well, I think Bookborn did a really good job when she made a video about the gamification for YouTube content creators and how it really kind of feeds into this dopamine thing where we want to see how our videos doing and we just, it really gamifies it. But I think you make a great point that if you just step back and if you want to take a break, it's a valid choice.
mhm.
Even yeah, I agree. Do you think that there are some misconceptions that people have about, being a YouTuber?
A YouTuber or a booktuber?
Either and or both. I'll let you decide
Well,
or
one, I
or
don't think
answer.
being a YouTuber is a dream job for many people. They may think it is. I would never want this to be my full-time gig ever, ever, never, ever, ever. One is because I like my job. I like my
Right.
career choice a lot. I love it. But also on top of that, it's just like this is fun. And as soon as it would not be fun would be the time where I'm relying on the fickleness of it all to, and
Right. It
associating your worth with performance is a really dangerous thing too. That's easy to slip into at first. And especially if you're not used to being on like social, like I don't do a lot of social media. So like for me, I had to like, I was like, oh, I see what the dopamine hit is. Like I understand why
right.
people stories. Like I get it. I've never understood Instagram stories.
Mhm.
And now ever since I had a YouTube channel, I kind of understand it. I'm like,
Mhm.
it's the feedback.
Right. And it's immediate. I mean, boom. It's like you do something,
Yeah.
happy, happy, happy. But
Yeah.
but Meta knows that and YouTube knows that. So I
Yeah,
mean,
there's a huge dopamine drip
yeah.
that
Yeah.
comes from it all. But with BookTube, I would say that if your idea is to go full time, realize that at some point you're going to hit a ceiling most likely, and you're going to have to incorporate some other sort of thing. Like it just if your goal is to make money and stuff, like I don't think books are a good idea. I don't think it's the grift spot. I think there's
Mhm.
many other places you could go that you could do a lot more with. So that's something to keep in mind. But that's really it, I guess. Also one of the terrible things is watching yourself die on camera kind of sucks. Like I've literally just watched myself age in 4 years and I'm like,
Really?
oh
I
yeah,
think you
yeah.
look good, man. I don't
Thank
know.
you.
Yeah, you look pretty much the same
Go
as you
watch my
did.
first video,
I
bro.
did today.
I was like 185 pounds. I had cut for a jiu-jitsu comp and like I was chiseled jaw. I'm like, God damn. And now I look at myself, I'm like, I kind of look like shit, you know?
Well, now
So,
that
yeah.
now that you mention it, the lights were a little brighter on you 4 years ago than they might be
Yeah.
now. So, yeah, I mean, I suppose I'll get there. I've only got 6 months under my belt to look at
Just
videos.
2 years. Give it 2 years and then go back, watch the first video and be like, this is depressing. Holy
Oh
shit.
my god, yeah. Watching yourself age, yeah, I can see that. You and I were talking about this, I think, backstage beforehand, but I had written this down because I think I know a lot of the times in these chats we do get other booktubers and we do get, other vloggers and bloggers and all that stuff. Can you discuss or at least touch on the importance in your mind of authenticity and really just kind of being who you are rather than what you think people want you to say or to be?
Uh, I have always had a bit of an issue with like faking things, which is funny because in wrestling, I mean, wrestling, it's always the big thing is if you're not playing a character, you're really just yourself turned up times 10. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? So for me, like what wrestling was giving myself the allowance to believe in myself. That is the difference between what my wrestling character was and myself now. And along with confidence can come arrogance and cognitive dissonance, and so you can play with those things, right? But I was always still authentic to it to a certain extent. I mean, there are things that I would like say or do or yell at a kid or so I would never do, right? But
right.
like if that's like, okay, well, if I was me, but like a way worse version of me, that's how I would be a bad guy, right? Like
Times
that,
10.
yeah,
Sure.
exactly. So um I don't know. I don't do well with a playing of a character. But the one thing I will say is like when I see people that have like really well manicured videos and they're so precise in what they do, and it's really impressive. But
Mhm.
then I will watch them in a long form conversation, and it is so mundane and just doesn't have a lot of like of that umph that their videos have. And I'm always like, oh, like there's something about that that makes you kind of pause, and you're like, oh, like that's not,
Which is the actual person,
yeah.
right? Is it the live person or is it the person that is in that very well produced video?
Yeah, and to be fair, you don't have to do that. There's nothing
Yeah.
wrong with putting on a performance. But I think the way for me personally, the way I like talking about books is usually pretty introspective, and I think that doing a character with that can be a little bit, it can feel wrong. The
Mhm.
tone would be off. So when it comes to authenticity, I guess it's like what you're trying to get across, right? I think people who do like vlog content can fall into like this perception that they always have to be like on, where I think it's okay to kind of be on, which to me is actually the more attractive thing about vlogging is that you
Mhm.
don't have to be on. The lights don't have to be perfect. You're kind of in the moment, which is nice. Um, but yeah, like as far as like which one's right or which one's wrong, I don't think there is really an answer to that. And I don't really know how to do anything other than be myself, I guess.
Yeah.
Just really it's too exhausting, you know?
It is. I mean, and to try to figure it in trying to be a fortune teller and guess what other people are looking for, it's not really the reason why, at least I know you and I do this,
Mhm.
because we're not out there trying to just gather the masses and the millions,
Yeah.
um, for that. There's other avenues, and I think you're right. Is especially on YouTube, books as a genre. There's clearly other. You go talk about finance. You could go be talking about software. You could be talking about
Yeah.
programming, and
Yeah.
these are things that are, from a back end side of YouTube, probably more lucrative. But
Yeah.
again, this is a passion project for most people that are, booktubers, because they're excited about it. And let's face it, not everybody we know in real life is reading the same stuff that we do, if they're reading anything at all. I mean, props if if the person, in the lunchroom next to you has a book, even regardless of the genre. Most don't.
Do you jump into conversations whenever you hear someone reading like someone's talking to somebody and they're like, "Oh, I read whatever," you know what I mean? Like Empire of
It
Silence. Like, do you jump into the conversation?
It depends. If it's like in real life, you mean? If I'm just
Yeah.
walking, I don't hear it much unless I'm in the bookstore.
Mhm.
But it depends on my mood. Like, I think in some regard, you and I are a lot alike, that when the lights go on, we can still be authentically us, because this is a part of our personality. But when the lights go off, we're completely fine, just chilling and,
Mhm.
being, more on the introverted side. So to answer your question, it really depends how I'm feeling on that day. But if I'm really feeling extroverted, absolutely, I will jump on. I will, say, "Oh, but have you read this and this? And what made you think to read Empire of Silence? And, did you find it on YouTube?" And blah, 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 blah. Yeah, then I'll absolutely engage. How about you? Do you do that?
No, no. The funny thing is, I sat in a room with a bunch of my coworkers as they were just ranting about how good Mistborn was, and oh, I'm starting to storm. Like, oh my god, oh, this is great. And they were all talking. I didn't say a damn word. I just sat there. I just listened.
Nothing.
Yeah, I just listened. And every now and then I'll engage with people like a jujitsu. Sometimes people will talk about books they've read, and I'll kind of like inquire a little bit.
Yeah.
So in that regard, a little bit. But yeah, sometimes I just sit back and I just listen, and I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna let them have their. Because what am I gonna do? Am I gonna go in there and go, "Did you actually know that Mistborn is very mid?" Or you know what I mean? Like, what
Well,
am I gonna do? Like rain on their parade? That's not
right.
cool.
That's true. But I do think that, I don't know. Like I said, I mean, there is a certain satisfaction in a inner voice having fun listening,
Oh
kind of
yeah.
as the quiet observer, on something fairly intimately well. As a matter of fact, I watched your Mistborn video earlier this morning from 4 years ago.
That was me and my like, I'm barely able to get these videos up because I can't seem to care about anything in my life. And I was like sitting in an
Yeah.
office chair with shitty lighting. Yeah.
Hmm.
I love that video actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, that's the whole thing, folks. If you want to come on this show and you do booktube, be prepared for me to watch your most oldest, grossest stuff you don't want anybody to
What all did you
see.
watch? What all did you watch? I'm
I
curious.
watched the Mistborn video. I watched some
Okay.
wrestling. I
Okay.
watched one of your recaps, but it wasn't a recent one. I'm trying to remember when it was. Maybe about a year-ish ago. I
Mhm.
watched your year-end content from last year, from 2023, which I loved. The Nutties, you can't beat them, right? I mean, come on.
That was my, one of my favorite videos I've made, actually. I really
It
enjoyed the
it's
nutties.
it's really one of my favorite because we all, have seen these annual videos that people do, but the
Mhm.
Nutties are, I mean, come on, this is next level. I think they need to get, the Chinese theater in Los Angeles for next year's Nutties.
I would absolutely love to do the nutties in front of a live television studio audience. That would be great. That's one thing I will say. We're talking about authentic and how raw
Yeah.
it is. There is a piece of me that that does wish for like show business esque things for the channel. Like the thing that I would do if I had more money, if I had
Mhm.
infinite amount of money, is I would have a set for chatting with nuts that would be set up like a talk show,
Mhm.
and I would fly people in, and I would
Oh,
do
yeah.
every and if that meant going down to once a month, I'd do it.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, I mean, we were kind of talking about prices of flights
Yeah.
before,
Yeah.
and God, man, they are
It's
expensive
hard.
to do.
You know
And we're just not that level yet. But
Yeah.
maybe one day.
Maybe, I said this like about 3 months ago, maybe 4 months ago now, that I wanted to come up with a series of programming called "Can I Come Over?" where I just call up on a video call with another booktuber such as yourself, and I say, "Hey, it's Brian. Can I come over?" And you would say, "Sure." And I'd get on an airplane and we would go film a co-episode at, your location, and we'd have it on both of our channels, and it'd be awesome. And that is a goal that I absolutely do have for the channel, is to be able to do the "Can I come over?" segments. I have no idea when that's gonna be a reality, but
It's tough. It's really tough.
it is.
And not to mention just shooting out, like to bringing equipment to film. I mean, it's a thing. It's a lot.
That's
A lot.
funny. So Alan wants you to build him a mother-in-law suite?
Listen, you, Atticus, and Christina can all move in.
That's excellent. Oh my god. That is that is too funny. Alan just called himself Jimmy's mom. Yeah, maybe. But, I agree with you. I think if I want a set, though, I wanna get the Merv Griffin set that Kramer had on Seinfeld. That would be my ideal set, I think, for doing this episode. I wanna have those big '70s chairs, the whole Johnny
Yeah.
Carson desk, sitting right in front of me.
Yeah, I've always wanted to be. I mean, Steve Donahue told me, but one of my favorite comments is he told me I was like Johnny Carson, and I was like, that's pretty awesome. But to
Yeah.
be honest, I would also like to become the Conan O'Brien, and I know Alan's gonna love that because he also loves Conan. But like the physical nature of Conan shows, I really
Yes.
like that. Um, so part of me would absolutely love that. If one of my favorite things I've done actually is the live episode I did with my buddy Andrew. I didn't like the setup because we kind of rushed it, but like the energy when someone's in the room is definitely different than it is on one of these calls. Now, I will say I think that it has gotten easier to do these things as people were
Mhm.
more used to it from COVID times.
Yeah.
And I think that you can get away with doing shows like this now and being very entertaining and hundreds of thousands of people can watch. It's absolutely doable, but I still think there's a magic to the same room content, like to Ramble, right? They've blown up.
Absolutely.
They have, and also they have a very good strategy. Like they know what they're doing. And
Yeah.
the clipping of the show linking to the pod. This is all, very good strategy to
Yes.
gain followers. But like without a doubt, I mean, I think a lot of that is just them being in the same room, honestly.
For sure. There is a definite energy total shift in an exponential magnitude that
Mhm.
you just don't get when you're in a room talking to the camera or talking, to a screen.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean the same thing over a Talking Story with John and his son. I mean, they've got banter and you can really feel that through the screens. So
Oh, he's fantastic. He will be the guest on Chatting with Nuts this week, by the way. I'm announcing it right after we go offline here
oh
tonight. I'll
cool.
be posting it. And yeah,
We love breaking news on For Whom the Bell Tolls.
breaking news. Yeah,
And
I love that dynamic though. Very
yeah,
conversational. Did you wish your mother happy Mother's Day? Like
yeah,
I don't know. There's something about it, man. I
yeah.
love it.
He's a good dude. He actually dropped on our when we talked, he announced that he was publishing a book. So we tend to have this theme of Talking Story breaking news going on there. Look at this. Look at this. So he's all ready. He's already like, wait a minute, I thought I'm coming on.
Yeah, it's talking story, Alan. You would enjoy John quite a bit. John went to the Christopher Rocchio signing, and I love that video. I thought he did a great job with that.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, him and I are simpacados for sure. My God, I don't know. I had lost track where I was. I wanted to ask you too, because as I was putting together, I did a video last week about some of the more challenging books on my TBR. I
Yeah.
know you've read some of them. What
Mhm.
can you tell me about this second apocalypse?
So Second Apocalypse is like the unsung like giant in the fantasy genre. Like a lot of people are like, "Oh man, we need more worlds that have like all this detail and history to them and long spanning epic battles and stuff like this." And you don't really hear Second Apocalypse mentioned in that same realm at all. And it's due to the content of the series. Also the limited availability kind of hurts it as well because they're kind of hard to get in some regions. And they're not like in the bookstores. You know what I'm
Okay,
saying? Like you're not going to walk in and see the Judging Eye on a shelf unless if it's a used bookstore. Usually, I'm sure Canada has some of them, but there is something to be said about the content, of course. But I just think you're in for like an epic, dude. If you're at all interested in the Crusades, now I'm not saying it's historically accurate because that's
right,
not what it's trying to do, but it is inspired by the Crusades for sure. But he takes a lot of inspiration from Dune, Lord of the Rings, and Blood Meridian. And I think that the culmination of those things in the Second Apocalypse, specifically in the sequels, actually comes across in just a very unique way that no one else has really ever done before. I mean, if you read it and told me your favorite series is Second Apocalypse, I wouldn't be shocked at all. Like it
really,
is, yeah. And also the battles are very like Homerific. Like they're like bird's eye view, like epic. And he uses death came swirling down, and there's just a
sure.
lot of inspiration there that I find to be really interesting. Um,
Uh,
but Alan said,
I'm watching this, and it's like this. We should put these up just so we have a
record.
record.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Doesn't it? I mean, this isn't breaking news, right? I mean, we this is the opposite of breaking news. And of course, that is a hey. Is that going to be a category on
Jeopardy.
Jeopardy? I have to. I got to remind myself to make a note to ask him next week if that's going to be a category on the next book Jeopardy.
Oh man. But
Maybe he describes the unwashed anus, and we have to figure out what author he's talking about. So, yeah,
man, Second Apocalypse though, I'm very excited for you to give it a go. I think it's really excellent. They are pretty down and depressing books. Like there's not a
yeah,
lot of light there. There's some small moments of humor, very
yeah,
dark humor at times, but overall, there's nothing really quite like it in many ways. And I think that Baker has a way with words that come across almost biblical,
interesting.
almost like Book of Judges, like Old Testament.
Sure.
Which
That's my
there's
people. Yeah, that's my people. I grew up on Old Testament, so
yeah,
yeah,
well,
yeah,
you might recognize some of the atrocities that he kind of plays with, but I just think that it's a unique series, and there's 7 books. It is technically finished. There are some people say that he still has. He said he had this other duology to write, but I think the story stands as it is with the 7 books rather well. Um, you're in for a tough time, though. I mean, they're pretty rough.
Well, it may not be soon because I'm committed to starting Malazan again. Well, not again. I read Gardens of the Moon for the first time a couple of months ago and absolutely loved it. And
Mhm.
then I decided I didn't really want to do that and Sun Eater at the same time. So get through Sun Eater, then we go back to Dead House Gates and move through it. But after that, I got like this incredible book mail from Janny Wirtz with all the hardcovers of the Wars of Light and Shadow. So
Nice.
yeah, so that's coming up, I think, before Second Apocalypse. And have you read any of her books at all, or that series?
Yeah, I read the first 2.
Okay.
I believe I read the first 2. Yeah, I finished the second one, and I put it on pause. I haven't went back to it. They require a ton of attention, a
Hmm.
ton of attention. And I have them all, and I hope to give it a go once I have the attention span for it.
Sure.
But it's definitely an epic series, 11 books, and now there's an audiobook for book 1, which is
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, I just got it to support her, which is, really, really good. Because I think for me, I would rather read it and focus on it. And that's really what she said was is that, they're not difficult, but they do require significant focus while you're reading them. But hey, John from Talking Story and I are going to be reading them next year. So once we get through book one and book two, if you happen to be in the mood to
Jump back in.
jump back in,
You
you've
know,
got to,
that was one of the problems is I was a part of the read along group with AP and
oh
Joanna
my
and
God.
Philip, and we pushed it back a year. Like we started a year after we said we were going to start. So I had kind of not planned for it. And then all of a sudden it's on the, they're like, "Oh, we're starting." And I'm like, "I don't know. I don't know if I have time for this." I didn't, this is 11 books and I read
Yeah,
those books slower than any book I've ever read in my entire life. So,
really.
yeah, so I don't know. It'll depend if you guys what your pace is.
My guess is we're going to take a pretty casual pace with it.
Yeah.
Um, Mostly on her recommendation. I mean, she flat out said, don't rush through these things. Take them as they go and then move on to something else. Then go pick up the next book and move on to something else and then pick up, so
Yeah, she's very available. That's a unique thing about an author to be, that's written for so long is just to be so accessible and
it's
willing to talk about it. It's pretty interesting.
It's it's fantastic. I like look at her as an aunt almost. She's just a wise person
I
and
immediately thought of like an ant, and I was
oh
like,
my
"What?"
god.
Like I
No,
was like,
no, no,
"What?"
like familiar. The ant that has a U in it, Jimmy
Okay,
does.
okay. I don't know. My brain went there, and I was like, "Huh? That's kind of rude."
No, no, yeah, right. Here I am slamming Janny words. No, 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 no. Never. No,
Uh,
she's been hugely supportive to my little fledgling operation that I've got going on over here in the living room. So yeah. Oh my God. So I where was I? I don't even remember where I was.
You're talking about difficult series. You asked me about
We're
six.
talking about difficult series. So that was one of them. Cloud Atlas as just a book. I remember you speaking on it a little bit. And the premise is interesting to me where there's, different stories and then they kind of go back upon themselves later on the book.
Yeah.
Had that been on your radar for a long time and you finally got around to it? Or was it something new that someone brought up that you just read? Because I am fascinated on some of these books that you read that just I don't hear any other booktubers talking about on this circle.
Yeah. So, from what I can remember, Cloud Atlas only ever came across my purview for like, and it's it's been on the radar for like since I started my channel. Because one of the people who one of my patrons is Pekka, and his David Mitchell's his favorite author from what I can remember. Hopefully, I'm not misquoting him, but I'm pretty sure that's his favorite author of all time. He has been trying to get me to read Cloud Atlas and Bone Clocks for 4 years. And I don't remember how the Bone Clocks came about. I don't know if I decided to read it or if it came on the Patreon wheel. I'd have to remember back. But I read Bone Clocks and
Okay.
it was so at first I didn't really, I was like, I don't know about this. Like it's a young teenage British girl, or is she's European. I can't remember exactly what the country is, but I was like, am I gonna like this? And then bam, the section changed, a new character, and Holly was the main character from part one. I started to really enjoy her, and it was just off to the races from there. So then I said, okay, I want to read Cloud Atlas, because Cloud Atlas, a lot of people say is his best work. Like
Okay.
that's the one he's most known for. But a lot of people also say it's challenging, but kind of polarizing too. So I just gave it a shot. And Fantasy Wash is asking if I like Cloud Atlas or Bone Clocks more. I like Cloud Atlas more. I think Bone Clocks is a more cohesive narrative that people are going. I think more people would like Bone Clocks than Cloud Atlas, most likely, because Cloud Atlas is so unconventional with its structure. But that's kind of how I came across it. And Pekka had been begging me to read these. I mean, he always on the Patreon. He would just switch them every
Sure.
month. Bone Clocks, Cloud Atlas. He's switching back and forth. And we finally got around to him, and I got to apologize to him because I should have read him a whole hell of a lot sooner. I don't know
Right.
if I would have appreciated him this much or as much as I do now, though. That's the hard thing is like you don't know when you come across something how you're going to feel about it. Cloud Atlas is probably in my top 5 books of all time.
Yeah, it's absolutely it's happening for me very quickly because of the fact that it is, it's a standalone. I mean, we don't get to
Yes.
run into those all that much. So
Yeah.
100% that's happening. I'm jumping back into GGK
Oh,
starting tomorrow.
With what?
So,
What are you reading?
The Lions of Al Rasan.
Great book. Love that
Great
book.
book.
Yeah.
Excellent. I was going to ask you if you've read that book.
I really like that book. There is like a medical professional character in that book, and there's also
Okay.
a medical professional character in Lord of Emperors. And I'm like,
Okay.
man, GGK is really good at writing people who are in the medical profession. Like he's great at it for some reason. Sarantine Mosaic, by the way, which is
Yeah.
Sailing to Sarantine and Lord of Emperors, is phenomenal. When people ask me what should be adapted for television, that's what should be adapted for television.
Really.
It would be an incredible television show. And you could run it alongside of like HBO could do it with A Song of Ice and Fire because there's no similarities because like GGK doesn't really write a lot of fantasy into his books. So you could literally just
Right. There's probably no dragons.
no,
Yeah.
definitely not. You know, so
Yeah.
you could easily air it on the side and people wouldn't be like, oh, another fantasy show. You know, people
Right.
wouldn't even worry about that. So man, Sarantine Mosaic is a banger. Whew.
Is it, when you look at your TBR sometimes, isn't it like, God, I just want to get to all these books because like now you're selling me on Sarantine Mosaic and yeah, but I've got Malazan to do too. And I've also got, yeah.
It's overwhelming even as somebody who's knocked out, you know, a lot of the major series. You know, I've done the booktube darlings, as they say.
Sure.
I've done them all, I think, to this point. Unless you know, I didn't finish Wheel of Time. I haven't read the Red Rising sequels, but like for the most part, I've done them all. But there's still so many books I want to read, and some of them are so big. Like I started 1Q84 by Murakami.
Yeah.
Which some might ask why, because
Yeah.
I was so middling on his other two books, but there's something about this dude's writing that I just enjoy. 1Q84 is like 1,300 pages. And I'm like,
It-
why did I start this?
right. It's Shogun length.
But it's so good. I love it so far. There's a
Wow.
whole chapter about kicking dudes in the balls. It's so interesting. Yeah, there's a character and she has perfected the kick to the nuts. And that's the whole chapter. And I know it sounds terrible.
Yeah.
I loved it, dude. I thought it
Oh
was
my
so
God.
interesting.
Well,
But I need to start this bad boy. I need to start Witchwood Crown. Look at that.
oh my God.
That's a big book.
What book is that? And so it's Witcher. I don't know anything about it. Tell me about
first
this.
book in the Last King of Ostenard sequel series to Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn.
Oh, so we're talking. That's Tad Williams. Okay.
Yeah, there's a bridging novel called The Heart of What Was Lost, which I read, which was phenomenal. And now Witchwood Crown, Empire of Grass, Navigator's Children, and then the final book. I might be getting one of those mixed up, but the fourth book is finally coming out this year. So I am super excited. As a nuts, you have vested interest, man. Oh, in the chat.
Exactly.
By the way, only best fantasy novels. I like your channel quite a bit.
Yeah, it's interesting that I have found so many new channels just in having a channel that it's very cool. Some of the content that I found. So okay, so you're going to be getting back into the Tad Williams, and you look pretty fired up about that.
Dude, it's insane that Tad is writing a finishing book to a sequel, one of the most popular trilogies of all time, and no one talks about it. Like I mean, there are people who talk about it. Like I know Petrick has talked about it, and there's people in Discords that are excited about it. But like, you would think like the community would rally around it a little bit more, but it just doesn't seem like there's a lot of people who find Tad to be long-winded and a little bit boring. I don't personally.
Yeah.
I really like his stuff, but I've heard almost unanimously, even people who are middling on Memory, Song, and Thorn, who have read the sequels, are like, they're just absolute slammers, like front to back, just packed with great fantasy world building, tons of different cultures and areas to go through. Ostenard's a special world that does not get enough credit when people talk about interesting places in fantasy. Ostenard has to be on that list, without a doubt.
When did he start writing that series?
1980 something.
Okay.
Let's see. Dragon Bone Chair pub date. Let's take a look, because I know in 1988.
Okay.
Because he published Tail Chaser's Song. They got picked up by DAW, and when he was in a hotel room with his agent, they were talking about Tail Chaser's Song, which is about cats. And he was like, "So what do you really want to write?" And Ted's like, "Well, I'll tell you what I really want to write." And he talked about this trilogy, Memory, Song, and Thorn. And the guy said, "Write it." And he did. And he wrote it, and bingo, nailed it. Huge, massive, changed the fantasy genre. Doesn't get enough credit.
Before I started the channel, I never even heard of it. It's crazy.
You know what's crazy though? He has sold so many books. He's very popular over and out of America. He's very popular. Yeah.
That I mean, I had heard about all most of the other ones, and I grew up in the '80s reading fantasy, but maybe that was just sort of a little. I don't know. I was probably right in college when that started coming out. I was doing other things besides reading
Yeah, and you got a lot of
fantasy
cool
books.
stuff coming around that time, right? Like you got Black Company that's been out. Obviously, Thomas
Hmm.
Covenant's been out for a while at that point, but
Yeah.
like Ian McCaffrey's writing at this point. Then
Yep.
Robert Jordan drops this little thing called The Eye of the World, and then all of a
Yep.
sudden Game of Thrones comes out. You got Realm of the Elderling start. It was kind of a stacked time. So it doesn't shock me necessarily that it's a slightly underappreciated, but I don't know. I feel like when new books come out, there's always like a renewed interest, and I would love to see more
Absolutely.
people checking out the sequels, or at least reading Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn for the first time. Though, it's unfortunate it has to compete in the fall with, Stormlight 5. So,
Yeah. I
yeah,
mean,
good luck,
that
right?
I don't think anybody's going to compete with that. I mean,
No,
that's its own animal. It's its own universe completely.
yeah.
So, have you read those Stormlight books?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, I read, all 4, and I read the 2 novellas, yeah.
Did you like them?
Yeah, I have a podcast, with Christian from Lost in Discovery where we do, about 2 chapters every week, and we kinda break them down.
Really?
Um
How did I
Yeah,
not
yeah.
know this? I thought I was a Jimmy Nut fanatic.
You know how I said I don't care about marketing? You can tell.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can
Yeah.
tell. Yeah. I'm just terrible at it. Really, it's an excuse to hang out with Christian. I like Christian more than I like Stormlight. Uh, but Words of Radiance and Oathbringer are, to this day, 2 of the most, like, awesome reading experiences I've had.
Hmm.
I do have faults with the series. Like, I have things about the series I don't like, and, I do get slightly concerned with, like, if I'm going to continue to like the series as it goes on after
Hmm.
the last one. But overall, who else is really writing a 10 book epic right now
Right. You
with
know,
a tremendous amount of thought put in to the plot and how things tie in? And obviously, there's the Cosmere side of the things, which I'm not as interested in as other people. Though I am a little bit more interested now that I've done this podcast with Christian because he does know some of the connections. And
sure.
when you have someone who's not telling you you're stupid for not knowing about it and
Right.
explaining to you why it's cool and
Yeah.
like doing it in a way that isn't like annoying. I know that sounds like really jaded of me, but like Christian I think he's one of the best ambassadors of Stormlight because he's fairly normal. You know what I mean? I'm gonna get
Yeah,
killed for that.
yeah, that's okay. Hey, Jimmy said it, folks, not me. So,
Yeah, comes
all
in my
you
head.
Brando Sando people, hey, next week we got a guest that'll talk even worse about Brando Sando. So,
I
be
just don't get it, Brian. I can just hear it now.
yeah, exactly.
I don't understand. I
Yeah.
can
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, I'm with you on book 4. With that, I think it's a pretty common sentiment, unless you're just absolutely he can do no wrong whatsoever. I mean,
yeah,
there's clearly uh, a drop for me between book 3 and book 4, and some of it might be the Dalinar focus to not being the Dalinar focus, but
yeah.
just
Well, I think that that's part of it, but I don't know. Part of me wants to know what I really want to reread it because I just reread Way of Kings, very slowly, 2 chapters a week forever. And I just finished it. And when I did Way of Kings, go watch my review. I mean, I was screaming, I was saying, oh man, like this is going to be remembered. And I actually am
mhm,
right about that, by the way. I think that
yeah,
Stormlight will be remembered. So I don't think I
yeah,
was wrong. But I was over the top. I had a great reading experience. That was a very raw reaction. But on a reread, The Way of Kings like clearly has issues. I think, at least for me, I should say,
sure,
in my experience. So do I think it's as good as I once did? Probably not. But do I still recognize its strengths and do I still think it does some things exceptionally well? Yeah, for sure.
yeah.
And did I find new things on a reread that I did not see the first time? Oh yes. Oh
So let
yes.
me ask you about that because that's something I never do is reread. And I think it's because of FOMO that I want to just always read another book that I haven't read already.
Yeah.
So I can, have something to talk about with somebody else that, has read that book. I'm not a big rereader at all. It's really rare that I do it. How often do you reread?
Oh, very rarely. I actually
Okay.
had this conversation. So I don't like rewatching shows and I don't like rereading books. The exception is Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire.
Sure.
And that's how I know I love it because like I can go back to it, but I'm not the kind of guy that can just reread. I was supposed to reread First Law trilogy last year with a couple of people in my Discord and I just didn't do it. Like I sat down to do it and I was just like, nah, like it hasn't been long enough. I've reread Lord of the Rings a bunch of times now and Hobbit, but those are like those are very nostalgic for me.
Sure.
But I'm not a huge rereader. if I reread something, it's pretty monumental. For instance, I read Blood Meridian and then read it again within 2 months.
Really?
I've never done that with anything. I mean,
Now, did you decide to reread it because you loved it so much or because you wanted to see if there was stuff
love
you
would
missed
love
or
love is a hard word to use when you're talking about Blood Meridian, but
yeah, but I mean, what was the reason that you had to go back? Because I mean, when you do something 60 days later, that's like an internal thing commanding you to go do it, right? I
it
mean,
wouldn't leave me alone, dude.
yeah,
I wouldn't leave me alone, and I knew I enjoyed it, and I was taught most of the people I talk to hate that book. And, like, they would tell me I hate it, I'm like, I kinda I wanna hate this thing,
right?
because I don't understand it totally,
Yeah,
and, then rereading yeah, look, Evie said, "Bets on Jimmy mentioning rereading Blood Meridian." Yeah, she
yeah,
knows.
there you go.
Um,
Yeah, she
but
knows.
it was just on my mind. Now, what I will say is reading something slowly on a reread is very rewarding because there's no rush. Like you've already read it. So like
Right.
what's the harm in doing a chapter a week? You can do that. No one's watching. Who cares? So for me, A Song of Ice and Fire, right? The first time I read
Mhm.
that, I did about 2 chapters a week. That's how I originally experienced it. Then I reread them multiple times through like fast. And
Sure.
then now I do Bend the Knee where we do like a chapter a week. Right now we're not doing it because we have the rewatch for House of the Dragon going on. But like, usually we're reading a chapter a week. And there is something just really fun about that I enjoy. So when I do reread, I don't like to make it a main thing. I'd
Right.
usually rather put it on the side. Blood Meridian's the same thing, by the way. I read it very slowly.
So you just pace it off while you're doing something else
Mhm.
while you're reading something else at the same time too.
Yep.
That yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I haven't been compelled to reread well, the things that I've been compelled to reread are giant series. I absolutely want to reread The Realm of the Elder Rings. I don't know with having this channel that I'm gonna get
Yeah.
to rereading it, but yet I was looking at some of my iPhone notes that are sitting in the cloud that I wrote like 8 years ago that I didn't even realize were still there, right? God knows what else is in the cloud, but I'm reading these quotes that I had, copied and pasted right out of Realm of the Elderlings because they were very meaningful to me at the time, and
Mm,
it's like it came back to me the other day when I was reading that, and I was like, "God, I really wanna go back and do this," but
mm.
even at a couple of chapters a day or a week, that could be 5 years of reread.
Yeah, I mean, I really would like to reread Malazan and Second Apocalypse again, and look at it from a little bit of a, what happens, so like you can look at it differently, which is huge. And with Malazan, I have reread the first like half of Gardens of the Moon now, reread it,
Okay,
and it's an incredible experience when you have all the context. It's insane, actually, and I'm sure Second Apocalypse would also feel this way.
sure.
Now, as this is interesting, right? So as I read more fantasy, and naturally, there's just going to be less things that I'm as interested in as other things. There is definitely a possibility that next year, maybe I do pick up a series like Malazan or a Second Apocalypse or something else, right? And I reread it. And then that is a really cool thing because I can then make videos about it. I can then
Right.
chat more about it and I can pick up on things I've missed. You can have a whole new set of conversations about it. And it wouldn't feel that bad because I would still be reading smaller, standalone books on the side, whether they're literary fiction or historical fiction or whatever they might be. But it's still fulfilling this huge gap of fantasy in my reading, right? If I were to reread some of those things. So I do think rereading is going to be something that I'm doing in the future, possibly.
Mhm.
And it also would be fun to make those videos, I think.
I think you'd have a blast with it, especially,
Mhm.
you will pick up stuff that you didn't know to be looking for the first
Yeah.
time around. I feel like if there's another series that I could do that wouldn't take me forever, it would be Book of the New Sun because I
Yeah.
feel like I feel like knowing what I know now, it would be awesome to go back and do that all over again.
Did you read Earth of the New Sun?
No, it's still on my TBR.
Yeah, same here.
I'm waiting for Jimmy Nuts. I'm waiting for the Friday Night Delight to tell me, "Let's
So
go, let's
listen,
go."
listen. Part of me wants to reread Book of the New Sun first. I kinda
Same.
wanna reread it, dude. I
I
kinda wanna
know.
reread it because then I'll, like, have a better perspective and then go into Earth, but I know I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna read them all for the first time, and then I'll go back and do things.
Yeah,
Man, yeah, we need to get to that, huh?
we do. We
What do you wanna do,
absolutely do.
July?
I don't know. You tell me. Yeah, well,
August?
I'm going to go on your timeline on that one because I always have at least one slot per month for a book that is going to challenge my brain a little bit, and whenever that's going to happen, I'm down. So we can figure that out.
Yeah, maybe next time I get the itch to be confused, I'll reach out to you and see if you're in the same. Yeah, someone's getting
Yeah,
up convinced. Listen, I literally was today just I have an idea for a Song of Ice and Fire video, and I'm like, I can make this, but I don't know if anyone wants to hear me go off about themes in A Song of Ice and Fire for like 20 minutes. Probably not.
I think they do.
Do you think?
I do.
I don't
Absolutely.
know. I
You've
don't
read the
know.
book a ton. You've been on doing the podcast. You
Yeah.
have an expertise level on it. You're an amazing communicator. It's still a very beloved series, regardless of whether it finishes or not. I think who would be better to do it than you?
So to give you an idea what it is the fact that there's basically like an alternate reality that's being like metaphysically represented in the veil because no one is who they seem. So like there's this like false identity of the veil. And
Okay.
and I have this feeling that the veil is also under a false identity as it's the impenetrable fortress. And I feel like it's all setting up for it to be like cast away. Like no one at the veil in the Song of Ice and Fire series, none of them are who they say they are. They're all under fake names. It's crazy.
I
Like
I, I think this is a video.
I think it is too, but I feel like I would need to take my time to to make
Yeah.
it. So I don't know. We'll see. Maybe one day.
I mean, the books have been out a while. There's no rush. And it's not like, book 6 is coming out in 2 weeks and you're trying to,
Hey,
ride the wave.
don't put that bad juju on that. What are you talking about? It's
I
coming out
mean,
next week.
wouldn't it be awesome if all this time he was actually writing both of the books and he shadow drops book 7 at the same time?
Listen, I wish, but it ain't
I in my little world at Bell
Bro,
Tube.
you know what's crazy that no one takes someone to task for? This is insane. The guy who played Barristan Selmy went up
Okay.
on stage at a big event and was like, "Yeah, from what I understand, like George actually has both books finished, and he's just like he's tightening them up." Like, bro, you're like a D-list celebrity. You can't just lie about shit,
Right.
and no
Right.
one, everyone's like, "Oh yeah, he was just lying," and I'm like, we just let him get away with this? Like, that is misinformation. That is ridiculous.
Well, I mean, Selmy will do Selmy things,
I
apparently.
mean, I love Barristan Selmy, but the guy who
Yeah,
played Barristan Selmy was
maybe not so much.
on some other stuff that night. Like, I don't know if he was just trolling or if he was like, did someone give him bad info? Like, I'm so
Probably.
confused.
I got hit up when I had the club. I got hit up by the guy that was representing Hodor, because he's a
DJ
DJ.
Hodor.
Yeah, yeah. So
He does
he was.
rapes.
Yeah, so they were like, "Do you wanna, hire," I think his name is Christian something,
I
maybe.
think so, yeah.
Yeah, they were like, "Do you wanna have him come do a set at the club?" And blah, blah, blah. And at the time, Game of Thrones, I think it just ended, and he wanted way more than I was ever gonna make having, nightclub people typically weren't gonna come see Hodor. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's maybe pre-season 8, you could have packed the bar. Um,
Yeah.
I was supposed to go to the infamous A Song of Ice and Fire con that was happening, Game of Thrones con that was happening in Vegas during COVID. It got canceled because of COVID, but I bought the package where you get to do a rave with Hodor, and I was just
Yeah.
going to see what was up. I just wanted to see people rolling on acid, acting like wildlings. I thought that would be super interesting.
They probably would. I
Yeah.
mean, a rave with Hodor style.
In Vegas? Yeah, it would have been amazing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
He was talking about George tightening up the next 2 wild card novels.
Right?
Dude, I've heard wild card books are actually bangers. Like the first few.
So I haven't read them. You've not read them either?
I own the first one, and I've heard like unanimously that it's actually really good. One
Okay.
thing people don't give George gets a lot of flack. He's actually a phenomenal editor, and this has been echoed by Brandon Sanderson, who I don't think is the biggest Gurm fan in the world, but he respects Gurm quite a
Yeah.
bit. And he talks about how people don't realize that like Gurm's a phenomenal editor. And he edits all the wild cards books, and he did write in them at
Okay.
one point too. But like, there's other guest authors, big names. I'm pretty sure. I don't want to be wrong, so I probably am wrong. So I'm gonna say it anyways, because if Barristan can lie about the books, I can lie, right? I
Sure.
think like Daniel Abraham and Robin Hobb have wrote in wild cards. I'm pretty sure.
Really?
I might be wrong about Hobb, but like he's brought in some big name authors to do work in wild cards. Not to mention another thing that George has done that is really cool is that he went out of his way to do like horror collections of short stories or dying earth stories, like dedicated to like in the essence of like Vance, right?
Right.
And he would bring these people together that just had no business being in the same book together that were really talented, you know? And I think that's pretty,
That had that common interest in that
yeah, I
kind
think
of.
that's cool. Like he was kind of a, at a time, a unifier. I know that like, obviously whenever you get famous and stuff, things fall apart and
Sure.
people have bad feelings. But I mean, there was a point where he wasn't the guy, but he was
Right.
still trying to make things happen and bring people together that I find admirable.
That's kind of what I try to do on the channel is
Yeah.
bring people together. I mean, that's really sort of it's probably from the bar,
Yeah.
it's that same mentality. So I mean, you've had tons of jobs. I know one of them, you've talked about that you've done DJing.
Yeah.
Is what you're doing now like your favorite or well,
Like
besides
coding.
the yeah.
Yeah.
We're getting back to books in a second, but I started thinking about jobs and
Books are boring.
we're off script every now and then. So yeah.
My favorite job was, well, I love personal training. Personal
Yeah.
training I really enjoyed, but unfortunately it just wasn't lucrative where I was. And the client, when I had a client that was serious, it was amazing. But a lot of people think they hire a trainer and they're fit.
Right.
I remember having a sorority girl that I trained, and she was like, "I need abs in 10 days," and I was like,
Yeah.
"That's not going to happen."
Right.
And so she went and got another trainer that lied to her, which I
Yeah,
thought was funny.
and she did, and that cost her a day. Now
Yeah.
she needed abs in 8 days.
And a lot more money than what I was charging.
Right? I mean,
So that was probably one of my favorite things because I take a lot of pride in being able to help people with like health and fitness and stuff. I love that. But um I think my favorite job, actually, this is so strange, but I was a supervisor level at Best Buy and was a part of a pilot program that was only being ran in Las Vegas and the Pittsburgh area, which is where I was.
okay,
And it was called the SITS position, which is the Store Technology Interactive something specialist. I can't remember what it was all, what it stood for. But essentially, my job at Best Buy was to train all the employees as a supervisor on how to demo products. And all the displays, the interactive displays, I was in charge of fixing. And it actually
okay.
taught me a lot about like troubleshooting and just like, messing around with stuff, tinkering. I love tinkering with stuff. And I thought that job was so fun. And I also held classes where I taught like elderly people how to use e-readers and
Oh,
iPads.
very
And just to
cool.
watch like people learn something is very rewarding. So I really enjoyed that position. It was only around for about 9 months. And then
Yeah.
they canceled the pilot, reorged, and the CEO got fired, and I lost my job, and it was awful, and it was
Ugh.
terrible.
Did you
But
ever have to come here for that? They're based like 20 minutes from my
no,
house.
they had me. They had like a corporate place up in Pittsburgh that I would go, like a
Sure.
regional place. So I
Yeah.
went up that way, but I never got to go to the headquarters as you will. I hear
Sure.
it's awesome. I hear it's really
The
cool.
building is bonkers, man. It is
Yeah.
just this futuristic. Yeah, it's very cool.
Yeah.
Very,
I
very
really like that job. Another thing I really enjoyed is, my first dev job, we had a coding boot camp on the weekends, and we taught people how to code. I really liked that. That was really cool.
So,
There
I
was
mean, you have teaching in common on both of those, right?
Oh, yeah, I really
Yeah,
like teaching. I really like teaching. In a different life, I think if I had stayed in the wrestling business, my ultimate goal would have been opening up my own wrestling school,
sure.
I think, but, that's not gonna happen. So
I don't know. I mean, you know me, I'm Mr. Optimistic sometimes, so I'm always kind of like a never say never, but that's up to you, whatever you
I
decide.
don't think I would like it now. I think
Yeah.
back whenever I knew that, like, when I thought that was it,
Mhm.
that would have been really great,
Sure.
but, uh, you know,
No,
that now I do it at jujitsu. I try to help people out who are new and they're working on their game and stuff. And I'm not a black belt, but I've been around for many years, so I try to help people there. And I think that kind of scratches that itch a little bit.
I think that's very, very cool. And I think in some regard that that's one of the reasons why I like when you do some of these reviews on some of the more challenging books, because I feel like you have an educational side to you that is very good at communicating what you're trying to say in almost like a
Huh.
teaching kind of way without being explicitly teaching anything. I don't know if that makes sense, but I get that vibe. And I've always kind of, since I started watching your channel more and more, I've always said to myself, this guy'd be like the greatest teacher, blah, blah, blah.
Thank you. I
He
appreciate
should
that.
immediately quit his booktube channel, turn over all of his subscribers to me. That's my pitch to Alan next week, by the way.
I don't have any. You can have them. I can hear
Right.
that. Yeah.
Absolutely. But no, I mean, I really do get that vibe from you that when I watch that you'd be an excellent teacher. I
I
think that
appreciate
I think that you care about, people actually learning something.
Yeah, the problem is that I'm dumb, and I know people are
Oh,
like, "You're not
come
dumb," but
on.
like, but from a like education perspective, like I don't have any degrees, right? So, like, I don't know what I would be teaching. You know what
Right.
I mean? Like that. I think if there was ever a path for that, it would most likely come from starting a tech YouTube channel, which I have thought about, like doing
Hmm.
coding tutorials and helping people out. And I just see so many people who are BSing. Learn to
Hmm.
code in a month and make $100,000 in 2 months. These people are setting people up for devastation and failure, and guaranteeing things they can't. It's a hard thing to learn,
Right.
but it's doable, and that's all people need to know is that it's doable. You know,
So, well, let me ask you then. So, what would have to happen for you to, and I'm assuming that would be on an alternate channel. You wouldn't do it on the
oh
Fantasy
yeah, it'd be
Network.
totally
Yeah,
separate.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, what would have to happen for you to do that, to throw a video up and see, if you like making that content? Or
You know,
would it even be worth you just making a video and not uploading it and just going back and watching it and see what you thought about it?
I think it would require free time. I think that's what it would require at this point, and I just don't have a ton of that right now. Like I have so many things that I do right now, but I also have things that are coming up. So me and Jared Henderson,
Mhm.
great guy, we're working on a project together. It's going to be
Very
a
cool.
podcast. It's going to be really interesting, and I
Oh,
think
that's gonna be great.
yeah, it's not going to be book based, so
Okay.
that's also going to be kind of an interest. And I'm going to have him on Chagwin Nuts in 2 weeks to talk about it.
Sure.
So like I have that coming up, and then me and Alan are talking about doing like a short show, like a 30-minute show. I
Okay.
don't even think it's going to be about books, and I think it would be a podcast possibly, but like 30 minutes, hot topics, boom, done. So like I have idea, you know what I mean? Like I'm not
Yeah.
there yet. I think what might happen maybe one day is like if I were to want to go part-time with my job, maybe because like I do think a tech channel would do much better.
Sure.
It would also lead to opportunities to do more contracting work, which I've done in the past, like for 1099s. Um,
100%.
I always tell people if I was worried about money, like if I cared about money, I would not be doing any of this stuff, and I would just be doing 1099 work on the
Yeah.
side of my full-time
Yeah.
job. And I'm an idiot. Honestly, I'm an idiot.
Well, I mean,
I just don't care that much about it. you know?
I don't know. It's easy to kind of say that, but I think you're onto something. I think you do have, reasonable ideas, and this podcast with Jared is going to be fantastic. I can tell you that 100%. He's extraordinarily fired up right now to be doing content. So I think the
Yeah.
timing for him is excellent.
Yeah.
And
This is
yeah,
something me and him have been working on conceptually for a while, you know. And I think it'll be a good time. And I see Evie saying we talked about this podcast literally for years at this point. No, this is the first time we've actually ever come up with an idea, because that was always the problem. We didn't have an idea. It can't be chatting with nuts because we've done
right,
that. It has to be something different.
right,
Um, so that, and also 30 minutes is something that I think is doable for me and Alan, right?
sure.
Um, and also time limit could be interesting.
Oh yeah, I mean, if there's a buzzer at the 30-minute mark, it just shuts off. I mean, the stream ends. Alan is
So
in mid rant, and it's just boop, it's
we
off.
gotta go. Subscribe to our Substack. Bye.
Exactly. I just learned what Substack was yesterday for watching Jared's video. I didn't
Yeah.
even know what it was. So yeah, that's pretty cool. Have you been on? On Substacks and things like that?
I know that they exist, but I've never read one. I plan on subscribing to Jared's.
Yeah,
I
same
didn't
here.
get a chance to do it today because I was tied up with work. But after, for those who don't know, you should go watch his channel. But he got laid off,
Yep.
and he just bought a house. He literally just moved into his house. He has a newborn, and he lost his job. So what he's doing, instead of licking his wounds, and he's just going with it, and he's going to try to
Hmm.
push in and make full-time content, which I think he can do because Jared is he's a brilliant dude. He's a good dude too.
Yeah, I mean, when we were talking about authenticity, it doesn't get more authentic than that when you watch him. I mean, he comes out and says, "I got laid off." I mean,
Yeah.
he actually was extraordinarily helpful to me through a Twitter DM maybe a week or two ago. So yeah,
Yeah.
pretty
Jared's a really good dude.
he is. And like I look at, he comes into, For Whom the Bell Tolls chat, and I watch all of his videos, and look, I'm a teensy tiny little channel. This guy's got 250,000 subscribers. I mean, he's got things going on.
He has cool tattoos.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
man.
totally right, man. Philip, I don't know. You bet English professor reacts to Jimmy and Jared's podcast might be the next YouTube reaction. I've been giving Philip shit about that title forever. It's great. I mean, it's a perfect title. I mean, it
Oh,
really
it's
is.
a banger. Yeah, I mean, it's a YouTube banger. There's no doubt about that.
There, there is no doubt. I like it too because I think in some regard, a guy like Philip is very respected in real life, and I think people probably don't just give him shit to give him shit.
Yeah.
So it's fun to kind of, a little bit here and there. But
Yeah, I think Philip's endearing part of his nature is the fact that he doesn't take himself too serious. I think
exactly,
that's one of the best things about Philip, and he's also, approachable.
yeah,
There's a lot of people who come from academic backgrounds that I think their goal is to usually make sure everyone knows that they're dumber than them,
yeah.
and that's one of my least favorite personality traits in a human being.
Yeah.
And
The condensation, because the condescending tone
yeah,
of I went to college for this, or I have degrees in this, and who are you, plebeian?
yeah, there's something to be said about like I think like the education that someone like that has and what they can bring to increase the quality of, like, let's just say like the content of booktube is a fantastic thing. However, the magic of this is that people talk about books any way they want and how they want, and I think that there is plenty of room for everyone to do that thing. And I just think trying to instill any sort of like quality control or standards on a website where like people put bottle rockets in their buttholes is like
Yeah,
it's what are you doing? Like
yeah,
I don't understand that. Now this is coming from someone who's reading critical theory books. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
and I like that aspect, but I am so in support of people who just turn on cameras and go, "This book's ass." And like somebody out there
Yeah,
likes that, and
yeah.
that's fine. I don't think it's that big of a deal. I think if you're trying to change those type of narratives, I actually think that begins in the education system. So like go back to that.
Mhm.
Go change that if you want, and empower more people to have those tools to do criticism.
Yeah.
But Philip is nothing like that. Philip, I'm sure there's times where Phillips is like, Jimmy,
Oh,
you probably
yeah.
shouldn't say it's lit. It's
Yeah.
actually well structured narrative.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
No, I'm
yeah.
sure, but he doesn't say it. So thanks, Philip.
Yeah, it's whatever's in his mind. He's got a great filter to keep it out. Yeah, exactly. And again, for the record, just so we have this on, forever.
I'm just
we
saying.
exactly, man. Oh my god, that is so funny. So
This is coming from the guy who said he stresses about his reviews so much that he just said, forget about it. So, I
right, I'm
mean,
not
I
gonna do
know,
them anymore.
you
Yeah.
know,
I,
I understand that I'm a hypocrite. So
well, we'll wrap up here at a few, but I have a couple. I definitely have one question for you, and I think this is something that I've talked to other booktubers that go through, we could call it mood swings, we could call it, clinical depression, we go, well, whatever we want. But do you feel like when you do a video or when that camera goes on, you feel better when you're done? Does it
sometimes.
does it does it help your mood at all?
Yeah, I would say that it makes me feel accomplished. There are some times though, I mean, over 4 years, there are times where like I get it done and I'm just like, "Bleh," and I shut off this monitor, I push away from the desk and I'm like,
Yeah,
"Posted, it's done." And it's not because I didn't want to do it, but because I'm just like going through something else is on my mind.
sure.
I mean, one of the most therapeutic videos I've ever done was my ups and downs book wrap up, which
Yeah.
isn't public anymore. But like I basically came out and I had not been doing reviews. Like I'd been missing reviews and people were like, "Where are the reviews?" And I'm like, dealing with this time, where I'm really struggling. And I just kind of went on there and I was just like, guys, like I can't do the things I want to do. And it sucks. Like,
Hmm.
and that was probably one of the most therapeutic video. It is the most therapeutic video I think I've ever actually made. There's been episodes of Chatting with Nuts that have just, at the end when I'm finishing out an episode, I get this just sense of like appreciation and gratitude for people who are watching. Like,
Mhm.
and it usually makes me pretty emotional. So there's been a plethora of episodes like that on Chatting with Nuts. Pretty much every time I end Chatting with Nuts, I'm on a high.
Yeah.
So those for sure, because I like the live aspect more.
Yeah.
For me, that the lights are on, there's no script, we're just rolling. I
Mhm.
said bottle rockets and buttholes. Like I shouldn't have said that, but that's pretty good catch tagline, right?
I like
So
it.
I like that pressure of being live. There's something about that. So I think I feel it more with Chatting with Nuts.
Mhm.
But yeah, there's a sense of accomplishment that comes along, with it. It
Yeah.
doesn't really come from the views, by the way.
Yeah.
I have felt much more accomplished about videos that have done poorly. Sometimes when people just leave a comment where they get what I was trying to say is the
Mhm.
best feeling in the world. So those help, because there's nothing that annoys me more than when people misrepresent what I've said or mischaracterize things.
Right.
That's the worst. So the opposite of that is also amazing.
Yeah. Again, being new, I haven't seen a lot of those comments yet, but I can see where that can be just a mental benefit. It's just a
Yeah.
nice little thing that, hey, you know what? Someone really got what I was talking about here.
Mhm.
And maybe that helped them too. Cause I mean, let's face it. I mean, it doesn't matter to me whether what your personal subscriber count is. You are absolutely top tier YouTuber in my estimation. Um, you just are. You're very excellent at doing this. And the book talk for me, when I watch you, is a bonus. Like I learn, I love it. Like I said, I get great ideas about books, but you just bring such an awesomely cool person to YouTube that I wanted to make a point tonight to just tell you that if it impacts me, okay, who is as jaded as they come from running a nightclub for 15 or 16 years, if you can get through to this steel cold, soul of mine, I am confident that there are lots of people who greatly benefit not only from your talks about books, but your honesty about some of the struggles that you've had. Just your being authentically you is fantastic. So
Thank you.
I just wanted to say that I promised Jimmy that we were going to stick to 2 hours tonight. So we're
Oh,
probably
we're
going
good.
to, we'll probably get wrapping up here pretty quick. But one of the things that I like to do on all of these episodes, and we do them, we do them on every BellTube episode. And this is a thing that, you know what, maybe I'm going to ask you before I ask you to do the one for the road. Do you find that the one for the roads can be, and give me your honest opinion here, because I want to know. You'll tell me nothing but honesty. Do they come off in any way as preachy or as, I know something you don't know, so you should know it? Because that has been, while we're being honest with each other here, that has been a concern of mine
Hmm.
is, do people find it, they're turning in for a book talk. Do they really want to hear something about some, trick or tip or hint of life that I might have come across? What has been your thought on that?
No, I don't think so. I think one, it's very dependent on your guest and what
Yeah,
they've decided to make that statement, right?
yeah,
But I think people usually take a pretty humble approach to that. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think that, I don't know. I don't think it comes across preachy at all.
that's good.
And a lot of times, you know, dude, the shoes that we walk in are so different, and the paths and then you go on to the paths that are different.
Hmm.
There is always a different perspective on almost anything that you've ever thought that you've had solidified thoughts on, and you need to be open to that. I guess that might be that might end up being my one for the road. But no, I think it's important to hear people out, and it's an opportunity. Maybe something comes to somebody that might change somebody's day. I think that's important.
Yeah, that's really what the goal is. It's like I've tried to make this in some regard a little bit like you too, because when you do chatting with nuts, I don't know what percentage of chatting with nuts is about books. If you were to take a look at
Depends the guest.
right, if you were to take a look at the overall minutes of chatting with nuts, I don't know if it's half or less or more. I don't know, but you get into some really great conversations. So I think people do tune into booktube channels for things besides just books. And I think that that's where that sort of stemmed from. But anyway, we'll probably get wrapping up. I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. And as always, we do have a one for the road tonight. It's not going to come from me. It's going to come from our esteemed guest, Jimmy Nuts. If you were going to leave us one for the road tonight, what would you leave us with?
Man, that's such a you know, and you actually told me like, hey, remember, there's one for the road. Like you got, you know, think about it a little bit. And I didn't actually think about it because I didn't know where the conversation would take us because it
But
could be
that's
funny,
but that's okay. I mean,
serious.
yeah, I like I said, there's no right or wrong answer here. This is just an opportunity I like to share with my guests that if they got something funny or something dumb or something insightful or something clever or something simple, shallow, or complex, it doesn't matter.
My one for the road is that for y'all listening or watching is that you're doing great and you're beautiful. Keep going. Keep going. Just keep going. That's all you got to do.
Phenomenal. Like I said, I mean, that's awesome. And there's probably quite a few people that are here live, and I know there's people that will watch on replay that will be their takeaway from this entire 2-hour conversation.
I hope so.
I promise you it will be. I do get messages from people saying that, you know, the book talks are great, but, you know, you really did hit me with something at that very end that I wasn't expecting. And literally that will be somebody's takeaway today. So
I hope
awesome.
so. Because it's true.
It is. It absolutely is. Jimmy, I gotta say, it's awesome talking with you. We could go another 2 hours. I know. But then we wouldn't be able to do a part 2 of Whom the Bell Tolls because we would have wrapped it all up in the first episode.
I was going to say, I hope the bell tolls for me once more.
Oh, it
Maybe
absolutely
multiple times.
absolutely. I mean, you're just like I said. I mean, you're not only one of my favorite booktubers to watch, but you're just a dude, man. I mean, you and I could talk about shit for hours. It wouldn't matter, you know.
Just dudes being bros.
It's you know, we've had some common experiences in life, and we have this obvious love for books, but we like the same video games, and we like
True.
you know to talk about different places. And before backstage, guys, we were talking about theater stuff and just you know a lot of common interests. And you know, yeah, that's the Book of Mormon cup right there. But anyway, I wanted to say thank you. If you're willing to come back on for Whom the Bell Tolls, it will absolutely toll for Jimmy Nuts.
Anytime.
Again, you're the greatest. I want to thank everybody who's been with us in chat. You guys have been fantastic. Some of these comments have been the absolute funniest since I started doing this live stream. So thank you for participating and making this show better. Thank you to everybody who's watching on replay. I know there are a ton of you. It means the world to me that you support the channel. And again, have a great night, everybody. And next week, I couldn't forget to mention it. Next week, the bell. I don't know if the bell will be tolling for him or if he's going to turn around and hit me with the bell. But the one and only librarian of Alexandria himself, Alan, will be joining us same time as this episode, 1 week from tonight. You know, I will probably have a conversation sidebar with Jimmy before that night happens to get the tips, tricks, and, you know, hints on how to have a great Alan conversation because he's the king of it.
Just listen.
Thank you. Yeah, just listen. I'm going to let him take over the show. I'm excited. I'm going to just hang out. So again, thank you, everybody. You guys are the best. I am very appreciative of all of you, and we will see you next week on For Whom the Bell Tolls. See you guys.